Before we get started, this video is sponsored by FaB Foundry, one of the first Flesh and Blood specialized game stores in the world, a pillar of the local FaB community in Portland, Oregon, a world tour organizer, and my personal favorite LGS. FaB Foundry is your one-stop shop for all things FaB related, whether that's singles, sealed product, playmats, sleeves, dice and tokens, especially featuring products from Metal FaB and Thai cards. FaB Foundry also offers a rewards program, which you can use to get store credit back on all your purchases. So please go check out FaB Foundries, support our local community in Portland, and use our promo code FleshandBad for a discount on your next singles order. Hey everyone, before we get into today's video, I wanted to give a quick breakdown on the structure. So each segment is going to be focused on a particular Sage hero. So that's going to be breaking down the matchup guide as well as kind of explaining like what the powerful things the hero is doing, that kind of thing. So these matchup notes are also available on the Decklist link in February. So let me know how you all feel about the matchup notes. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And I also wanted to quickly plug the Zen documentary, which for those of you who don't know, we basically have been putting together like a basically movie-like documentary on the history of Zen, which is one of FaB's, I guess, most influential heroes, for better or for worse. But yeah, if you haven't already seen part one of the Zen documentary, I encourage you to start there. But if you have seen part one and you want to go watch part two, we also have that available on the channel as well. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everyone, welcome back to more Flesh and Bad, and today I want to go over my secret TERRA list. So this is a list that I've been working on for the Battle Hardened Seattle, which I think I'm going to be going to in the next week or so. But basically my plan is to try to perform as well in the calling as possible. So I want to actually make this list like fully public so that people have access to it. And then if you ever end up winning something on it, you can feel free to credit me for this list. But anyways, this is my secret TERRA list. I've been working on this for probably at least a month or two, ever since like Sage started like kind of gaining popularity. But between the two lists, I have, I think, roughly like 250 games. So I have 150 on this like old list. That was before like the meta kind of started consolidating. I think I have like another 100 games on this new list. So a lot of reps on TERRA. Also, you can keep the nice little 90% win rate, which is not actually that hard on Talishar because I think a lot of people do play unrefined Sage list. That being said, I did try to bias my testing a lot more towards the more meta decks. So you see I have a lot of Chane practice, a lot of Ira practice, and then a lot of practice into like Bravo, Briar, Azalea, like a lot of the kind of just better decks right now. Oldhim as well, I guess. But yeah, anyways, I think this deck is like secretly very good, and I wanted to kind of give like a little background, right? So the best decks in FaB are typically decks where you're doing something that is like fundamentally unfair. I think that holds true for like a lot of decks in FaB's history. Like you have like Bonzen, obviously. You have decks like Icelander, who's doing like the basically like you can outmath everyone every turn cycle. This isn't like CC and LL, but you know what I mean. Basically, you have like certain decks in the game that are trying to do something that is fundamentally unfair. Now, I will say that TERRA, you might think that like, oh, like the ability is quite fair, right? You look at the hero and it's like, oh, you can pitch one resources to make one extra might, which is like on its base level, you're getting one mana, one value, which is like not very impressive. Now, what makes this deck unfair, right? And that is these new Clash cards, right? So I think in my previous list, I've had a lot higher density on the Clash cards. I think I've kind of like toned that down a little bit. But the fundamental reason to play TERRA is that you kind of just can outmath a lot of the better decks in the format right now. So the Clash cards are very powerful, and you're like more like low to the ground, like aggro decks. So like FaB, Ira, like these being able to block 4 on a yellow is incredibly good because you also have like basically you can also just think of these as yellow 4 blocks, by the way. They basically don't have any other text except in the Guardian matchups, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But having a resource card that blocks 4 is very, very powerful. Now there are some situations where these will like brick your hand and stuff like that. So you do have to be a little bit careful, but I think 7 is about basically the perfect ratio. What else is TERRA that's doing this fundamentally unfair? And that is basically a lot of your kind of like 2-cost and 3-cost attacks. So TERRA has the ability to basically on a 2-cost attack, you can pitch a blue Earth card to make an additional might. And there are a lot of 2 costs in this deck. So you have Staunch Response, you also have Staunch Response in the board. You have cards like Humble, which are very good in certain matchups. You have basically a lot of additional value generation just by playing an inefficient card and then setting up a might token for next turn. This deck is also incredibly strong into fatigue decks or just Guardians in general because you have access to Sledge, which is one of the most powerful Guardian cards in the game, basically, right? So Sledge in TERRA, or Sledge in Oldhim, right, is basically 2 cards, 6, right? Pretty good. In TERRA, you get 1 additional point of value by pitching an Earth card, which is very, very good. So in your longer, more fatigued matchups, this is basically coming in as a 2-card 7, which is really like I don't think they've ever really printed a weapon that is like a guaranteed 2/7. I guess maybe like Rock or something. But this is like very, very powerful in this deck. And basically helps you win against a lot of the better Guardians in the format. Like you'll win against Valda, you'll win against Bravo, Flattering Showman, and you'll win against Oldhim. Those are like the I guess like the 3 best Guardians right now. Now, a common question that I get asked is why not just play Oldhim over TERRA? And I think Oldhim has very interesting or like a very similar spread, right? You have access to Ice React, which is very powerful into aggro decks because you can guaranteed basically take a card out of your opponent's hand, which makes them a lot slower, which means you get to block longer and the game goes longer, right? And that's like one of the biggest advantages of Oldhim right now. But TERRA also has, I think, a lot of unique niche interactions. Mainly that you're a bit more aggressive into decks. Like Oldhim's floor is a lot worse than TERRA, right? Because at its floor, Oldhim is basically like sending 4 or sending like maybe like 7 or 8 or like 10 in the best case scenario. If you get to keep like a full grip with maybe like a red glacial footsteps or something. But like the numbers that Oldhim is like fundamentally sending are bad if you're putting him on the back foot, or if you're putting him on the front foot, basically like you're giving him the advantage. Now, TERRA, on the other hand, can capitalize on a lot of hands. Like, even if you give him full tempo, you can basically punish your opponent by setting up for next turn and then sending just, like, fundamentally good numbers. So you can punish with Fruits of the Forest. You can punish with, Canopy Shelter, like, pitching to, like, Sirens of Tape Harbor. There are a lot of really good attacks. You can even just punish by, like, sending, like, a Macho or a Thunderquick or something. There are a lot of really good utility cards in TERRA, and making the additional mites by pitching means that you're able to capitalize on being given full tempo a lot more. Yeah, that's basically my kind of TERRA, at least elevator pitch, is that you basically have a lot more proactive value generation than Oldhim does. That being said, it is at the cost of one of the more powerful utility tools in the game, which is Ice React on Oldhim's hero power. But I think that TERRA is basically just a very good values number deck. Like, a lot of, like, unless you draw very, very bad, TERRA can basically outmath a lot of the better Sage heroes in the game. And I'll kind of talk through some of the better Sage heroes right now. So I want to talk through maybe perhaps the easiest matchup. So this is Briar. I think I played between my 2 lists. I played. I was talking about this with Lupine. So I played 7 games on Briar on this list, and then on my old list, let me actually go ahead and look. So I think I played 14 games on that list. So between 21 games, I think I have not lost to a single Briar. And I think that's basically just kind of like one of the fundamental strengths of this deck is that you have access to Staunch Response, you have access to the 4 blocks, you have access to Arcane Polarity. They cannot deal enough damage to actually fatigue you. Like, I don't think there is a single Briar plan that can actually manage to fatigue a TERRA, basically. Like, you basically will not lose that matchup, almost guaranteed. I think that you can like misplay and lose that matchup, but like in general, you basically just walk down life totals and the matchup is very easy for you. But yeah, generally, you just kind of try to stay on the back foot, walk down the life totals, and eventually you will just kill them with Titan's Fist in the end. Let's talk through some of the, I guess, other decks right now. So I think the top 3 Guardians, at least in the public perception, are Valda, Bravo, and Oldhim. We can kind of look at the board for that as well. So you have access to a lot of really tall defensive tools. So you have access to Term Timber as well as the Staunch Response. And these also get a lot better, these 2-cost D-reacts, because you also get to pitch an Earth card to them. So you can make an additional Might, which can let you be proactive on your turn as well. So another really powerful kind of like tool in a lot of these Guardian matchups is just having access to these 3 reacts. You also have access to Staunch Responses. So basically your Guardians, Azalea, are almost unlosable. Like, I think that there are certain setups you can do with like Crashdown, where you can maybe try to get over TERRA stuff, but then if you're setting up a Crashdown, I'm going to be sending an attack at you. So like, you really don't get a ton of equity out of Crashdown, and with basically like 5 tall reacts plus the 2 Oasis, there's basically like 7-ish like functional D-reacts in the deck, so it makes it very, very powerful, and you basically like cannot just break through a lot of TERRA's defensive ability without putting in like a ton of work, basically. So let's talk through the Chane play, and I think Chane is probably one of the better decks in the format right now. I label this as medium because I think this is a very difficult matchup, and sometimes you will brick, sometimes they'll brick. There's a lot of variance in this matchup, and capitalizing on the variance and knowing when to pivot is kind of like the core skill in this matchup. So for the Chane plan, we basically have Humbles and Pummels. These are our kind of like 2 biggest cards that are going to try to slow Chane down. We also have access to Renounce Grandeur, which can stop Malefic Incantations, can stop Soul Shackles. Just a very, very powerful card. Comes in as a 3 for 8 against Chane specifically. But yeah, very disruptive on hit, very disruptive on hit, and we also have Boulder Drop. I've gone back and forth on whether or not to actually do Boulder Drop versus Sirens of Safe Harbor. I think Boulder Drop has its downsides in that you can have your opponent like put a card that they want in Blood Debt on the bottom of their deck, and then you can kind of like they can potentially gain value off that way. That being said, I think you still need to run Boulder Drop. You just don't want to play it in the super late game if you can help it, just because the effect is sometimes beneficial to your opponent. Putting like a blood deck card on the bottom. But in the early game, when you're trying to just starve Chain of Resources, I think Boulder Drop is a very, very powerful tool. Let's also go ahead and talk about, I guess, the equipment suite. So we have basically our normal kind of good Guardian equipment. We have the Civic Steps, Civic Duty, Blade Beckoner Helm, as well as the Stillblade Buckler and the Titan's Fist is a pretty normal Guardian setup. The only real kind of strange card is Ironhide Gauntlet. And I think that Ironhide Gauntlet is a really good pitch outlet for a lot of your Earth cards. So you want to pitch maybe your like 2-block Earth cards like Flourish or like Summer's Fall to it. But in general, you might be saying like, why not just use the Blade Beckoner Helm, which is also a fair ask. But giving access to pitch a card is really powerful. A lot of times you're going to be able to use this card to its full effect. So getting the 2 value plus maybe an initial Might token. Generally, this card is best paired with like Oasis, or you can pitch like a non-Earth card and like Staunch Response. So those are like the 2 use case scenarios. I think if you run multiple Ironhide Gauntlets, you start to run into scenarios where your blocking power is severely reduced, but having access to like one of this effect is very, very strong in terms of just like generating my token, getting you a bit of value, and then also allowing you to like play a lot of your other like more defensive tools, basically. The Blade Beckoner Helm is mainly for Ira, so your main goal is to just block with it. Make sure that you get the 1 point of value, and then at a later point in the game, you block a Kodachi when it matters, basically. Those are kind of like the main, I guess, 2 weird equipment. Now, the one equipment that I think is really funny to talk about is Civic Duty. So let's actually go back to the Ira matchup now. So Civic Duty is a very, very powerful card in the Ira matchup. And I think this is a tech that I think a lot of old teams are already using, so nothing super new here. But for those of you who don't know, the power of Civic Duty is in response to Kodachis. So Ira is a deck that typically runs Kodachis, although they sometimes do run Edge of Autumn. However, Civic Duty, when you're paired into an opponent who has Kodachis, says time block, basically. Now, that being said, you do have to get to the point in the game where you can actually afford to time block them. So Civic Duty, you do have to wait for them to basically use all their 1 costs, which I've actually added some notes here. But basically, you're trying to run Ira. There's almost basically a deterministic kill you can do on Ira with TERRA. And I've gotten basically good enough to the point where I can do this like probably 95% of the games. But your main goal as TERRA into Ira is to basically run them out of their primary threats. So this is like their 2-cost cards, their reds, like the cards that they want to be like playing on offense, right? And then while you're doing this, you're trying to keep track of all your 1 costs with Go again. So there's cards like Flex Claws, there's cards like Looking for Scrap, Bittering Thorns, other card like Razor's Reflex as well. And you basically want to keep track of all of the 1 costs that are left in a deck. And pitch stacking, I guess, or like pitch tracking, graveyard tracking becomes like very important in this match. Once the Ira is out of threats, you then want to set up your chess piece time block. So you block like 2 on just like a second buff Kodachi or whatever. And then on your next turn, your opponent is going to have a Vigor token with Kodachi. Now, Kodachi requires you to pitch a 1 cost or a 1 attack, or what does Kodachi actually require you to pitch? I think it's like a 1 attack, right? Hold on. Let me look this up. Kodachi. Yeah, so Kodachi requires a card in your pitch zone with cost 0. So if you have a Vigor token and you cannot actually pitch a card to Kodachi to get the Go again on it. So Vigor token basically removes the Go again from Kodachi, which is really good. Basically, what you want to do is get them to the point where they don't have a 1 cost, because if they have a 1 cost, they can use the Go again. They can use the Vigor token to get Go again, and then they can still send Kodachis afterwards, which is not desirable. So once they use all their 1 cost Gogans, then you can go ahead and use your chess piece, which will basically prevent them from having a turn. So basically, the max output on their next turn will be whatever the biggest attack is in their hand. Basically, they can't use Kodachis. They'll probably end up sending like a Bittering, or they'll probably send like a, I don't know, like a Torrent Tempo or some other like random 1 cost, or maybe even a 2 cost or whatever. But basically their max output is then like 6 value, which means you can block it very safely, like maybe even just send like Hammerback. Maybe even go like 4 block it to use like a second chess place activation as well if you want to like time block them twice. But at this point, you're basically trying to run them out of cards. And that's actually why you want to go first in this matchup as well, is so that you can completely like just run Ira out of cards by like sending like 8 or something on your first turn or whatever, and they block 3 or whatever. But basically, yeah, that's basically how the IRA matchup goes. You can pretty deterministically do this. I will say there are some awkward draws you can have, or maybe that's like a little bit less consistent. But in general, I think I pretty much like mastered this game plan into IRA. Also, another important tip, and one of the things that can cause you to actually lose the game into IRA is looking for opportunities to use civic steps. So civic steps is best used in the early game when they like are face up showing you what's in their hand, so like they don't have another card that they can give Gogan. So like let's say they like have like a blue and like a red in hand or whatever, and they go like Kadachi Kadachi. You can actually use like civic steps on potentially the second Kadachi, or alternatively, you can use it on like just like the ending attack. You basically want to use it at a point where they can't make use of the quicken token. It's kind of what I'm trying to say. So basically look for any opportunity to just get the 3 value off of civic steps in the early games, because in the late game you're going to be wanting to use your chess piece to do the Kadachi time walk thing. And I've talked through, I guess, some of the like the more important matchups in my mind. I think also we can maybe go back to Chane a little bit. But Chane is a very tactical matchup. This matchup is there's a lot of pivoting, and knowing when to go between like aggro and defense is very essential. So there's a point in the game where you're going to have to like pivot into block mode, and then you're going to just hope to survive, and then you want to try to disrupt in the early to mid game, basically. But yeah, we'll try to walk through a lot of the more popular matchups here, kind of just show off a lot of the reason to, I guess, play TERRA. And I've also included like complete sideboard notes for basically all of the best decks in Sage in my mind. So that basically kind of involves here. I also label these from like easy to like medium to unfavorable to like unwinnable. So we can actually talk about, I guess, TERRA's one completely unwinnable matchup. I think you can actually make this like slightly better, although I don't think it's great. I don't even think I have like a full cyber for this, because like I think you should actually just like scoop this matchup if you ever play it in person. So the one thing you can actually do in this matchup to make it a little bit better is like if the meta is very Enigma heavy for some reason, which I don't even think the deck is that good, but whatever. You could potentially bring in like Wreck Havoc to up your percentage from like 0% to 20% or whatever. But yeah, I think if there's ever a ton of Enigma in the format, it's pretty bad. I will say New is pretty bad. I've not seen a ton of New lately, mainly because I think she gets run over by a lot of the other decks. Fortunately, New and Enigma are kind of like kept down by a lot of the other decks. But New is definitely unfavorable just because she has access to play a lot of your bigger blues, which is kind of a little bit unfortunate. But yeah, I think that matchup can be a little bit tough just because like she sometimes will just banish a random macho, and then you're like sad and she sends it for 8 and you don't. But yeah, New can be a little bit rougher sometimes. And I think those are like the main hardest matchups. I think Kano is also like a little bit bad, but I think there are a couple strats you can employ into Kano. Again, I don't think there's a ton of Kano. I add some little matchup notes just to kind of like explain the plan. But yeah, those are like your 3 worst matchups, I think, right now. I think Chane is like borderline between like medium-ish. Like I think there's a lot of tech you can still like include for Chane, like maybe like an additional blue pummel has also historically helped. But yeah, I think Chane can also be a little bit of a rougher matchup, especially it's more so like a variance matchup than anything, as opposed to like I think it's like completely unfavored, like unwinnable. Like the Chane results are actually like Chane is probably what I tested into the most after the recent like Sage events. I'm currently like 19-5. So if I have like a 75% winning rate in Chane, I feel like I'm actually doing quite well. That being said, there are Talstar chains, so maybe a little bit worse than like the best chains in the world or whatever. But you can still actually do like quite well into the matchup. Like they don't just have like a deterministic kill on you, I think. That's enough talking. Let's go ahead and get some games on this deck. Again, I added complete matchup notes for most of the popular decks in the format. But if there's any deck I'm missing, feel free to ask in the comments. But yeah, I'm going to be basically playing games, walking through the matchup notes, and then also explaining as I'm going, like where I'm looking for to kind of like implement the ideas from the matchup notes. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and play against the best decks in the Sage format. Playing against a Chane, they win the die roll, so definitely going to be oh, interesting. I have us go. I feel like that's normally not correct, but we'll see how it goes. So again, we're going to use our chain board here, which is using arcane players as well as the pummels and the humbles, as well as I guess the Renounce Grandeur, all pretty disruptive effects and just good blocking value. Let's go and see how this goes. Again, this matchup can be very swingy, but I think that TERRA does get there a lot of the time. That being said, there are a lot of really good chain high rolls and setups that can do that, make this matchup a little bit more difficult. Okay, and we have kind of a funny start here. I mean, if they're... I feel like the correct play here is to actually just not pummel this, but depending on how much they block here, it might be appealing. They just give us 9 here. I think I'm fine to just arsenal the pummel, make a might token. Again, no real reason to overinvest on turn 0. Pummel and Arsenal is very, very good. One of the better cards in this matchup, and hopefully we can find either one of our Humbles or Renounced Grandeurs or just another Boulder Drop to pummel at a later. So let's take a look at what they blocked with. So I think most chain lists are on some number of Spellblade Assault. Just a very, very solid numbers card. So like 2 for 6 functionally that you can easily get going with the Shackles. And generally just helps you like also kind of set up a lot of your Blood Debt as well. All right, seems like they're on the Blessing of the Cult, so they're going to go for maybe more of a stack plan here. All right, so we need to basically prepare for them trying to stack us at this point. So let's go ahead and actually Fruits now, just to go ahead and gain the little point of life. I think we're going to, so this doesn't have Go again. Go ahead and maybe just staunch this, although I don't love it. Another option is to just give the Clash of Arms here. I made the Clash is a little bit better because this actually lets us make a Might for the next turn, which could be relevant. But again, opponent has a pretty good start here, setting up 2 Rune Chants as well as the Blessing here. Fortunately, we did gain a little bit of life padding this turn, but definitely still a bit dangerous to see the Blessing of the Cult. So normally, like, the best cards that Chane has to set up Rune Chants in this matchup are, like, the Blessing of the Cults. I actually not seen a ton of this one lately. But it's Blessing, it's Read the Runes, it's I'm trying to think of all the other ones. There's also the Malefic Incantations as well as the Runeblood Incantations, both of which are pretty good. They're going to hit us with a Yellow Malefic here. Could be worse. We do have the Renounced Grandeur here if they're just going to take a setup turn. Really punish them, therefore. It seems like that's actually what they're going to do. Also, like seeing that Read the Runes in pitch, because it means it's slightly more likely to banish, or they have to at least like draw around the Read the Runes now if they want to play it in late game. We're going to be taking a little bit of damage off of this Deathly Delight here, which is fine. We can afford to take probably 3 Rune Chant damage. And they're also not going to be sitting on a ton of Rune Chants. I think we probably want to try to set up the Renounced Grandeur pummel. So I'm kind of incentivized here to just take a bunch of this damage. So we'll go ahead and skip all the runes here. And I think we're just going to try to pummel this Renounced Grandeur next turn. So I think we'll even skip this Rune Chant. And this feels like maybe a decent opportunity to just go ahead and cash in the Civic Steps again. I want to use this later, or I want to use this earlier rather than later in this matchup, just because if they are able to sit on it, it represents another action point. It's kind of like a time snap potion. But again, since we're going to be hitting them with the Renounced Grandeur next turn, I think it's okay to maybe just use it early on. Again, it's a lot better to use it early game than the late game, because now they have to either try to sit on the Civic Steps, the Quicken token, or they have to basically try to like stack a bunch of stuff in their Blood Debt to like play around it and stuff like that. We'll go ahead and keep the life totals relatively even here. And again, the nice thing here is that they don't know that we do have the pummel. Right, so they got another pretty good stack of Rune Chants, but fortunately that's the last Read the Runes for at least a little bit. Go ahead and now just pop the Renounced Grandeur, so coming in for 9 base, could go up to 13, and then we'll also be able to make a Might on the back end. We do have to be a little bit careful about React here. The funny thing with this is this will also turn off Chane for a turn, and it'll also turn off the Runeblood Incantation, both of which are... But yeah, we'll see how this goes. So I think I am incentivized to go ahead and pay in here. They do have like multiple D-reacts, and that's fine, but I do want to just threaten their life total just a little bit here. So they have at least one. See if they have another D-react here. But again, they should be still getting hit by the pummel, which is at least nice. So see if they go ahead and discard here. And again, this is also going to turn off 1 Rune Chant from their Runeblood Incantation, which is really good. And it's also going to set us on another Might, which is fantastic. And again, I think this is one of the appeals of playing TERRA specifically over Oldhim, is you get a lot of flexibility in terms of like being proactive. That being said, there are definitely TERRA hands you can draw where they're not very proactive at all, but again, I think those hands are somewhat rare. So it seems like they managed to 8 Phantom Wraith, and they also have a Sigil Suffering outright, so that's actually good information that they probably have another Sigil Suffering somewhere in their deck. So this might be a decent opportunity to just take an off turn and just let them have this, because we're actually denying them a bit of setup by doing this. So let's actually go ahead and pay into the here. One funny thing I think that they missed that they could do is they can actually go ahead and activate Chane to just give this go again if they wanted to, and they wouldn't make a soul shackle, but I think it still would give the attack go again, which is kind of funny. But anyways, we'll go ahead and cash in the Clash of Shields here. We're going to lose access to our Might token, but that's fine. Again, we're going to just try to stay relatively healthy and kind of do like a little bit of a back and forth swing, because now we're putting the pressure on them to set up like a really good proactive turn, which they might not have, and we get to also sit on the Boulder Drop in Arsenal, which, again, as the game goes longer, it's a little bit suspect, so I'm going to want to try to ideally use it next turn if we can help it. All right, another fortunate set of banishes for us, so they banish another Sigil Suffering and Oath of Arcanate, both of which are not hits. They do notably have access to the Ebb and Fold, which can help them put a card with Blood Depth from hand into their banish, but again, they might not actually have the Rune Chance support to do that this turn unless they draw like a Spellblade Assault or something, which we've already seen 3 of. So we'll see what they got for us here. Again, we probably just want to maybe try to leverage the Arcane Polarity if they end up sending at this turn. If they don't end up sending, we're probably going to end up sending Humble here, maybe as a priority over the drop, though. Okay. Looks like our opponent's going to lead off on the Rune Blood Incantation, which is, I guess, a little bit late. They're about halfway through their deck at this point, so not exactly necessarily on time. Ideally, you want to be playing these like turn 1, like the most optimal case, right? It seems like our Chane friend is maybe having a little bit of a more awkward hand. All right, so this actually gives us a decent excuse to go ahead and just use our Arcane Polarity. So I'm going to take a little bit of damage here. So we'll go down to 13. And then now our Polarity is live, so we can bump that back up to 17. So we're staying, basically we're using this as like a 0 for 4 react, which is kind of cool. The one thing that's interesting from their end is the Bounding Demigons. I was on this card originally, but I'm not super high on it now. I think it's still like fine though. I just think it's like maybe a little bit weaker than what Chane should be doing. Like it seems good on paper, right? It's like 0 for 3 from Banish, but a lot of your like other cards from Banish are also 0 for 3, so it feels like a little bit worse. But yeah, we're gonna go and just try to strip cards from hand here. So Humble should hopefully demand 2 cards blocked, because they probably want to end up taking a Soul Shackle to make it work. And again, we're keeping most of our armor, we're keeping our life totals high, we use the Quicken token early, which is really good, so now that we don't have to worry about, like, Civic Steps can sometimes be a very big liability in the late game, which is why you want to try to use it a little bit earlier. And then we also get this nice little Might token. It seems like they banished a little bit of a couple unfortunate hits here, so the Arcane Blessing and the Cult. Looks like they're doing a lot more of like a stack game plan, but they're also, it's very interesting. I've not seen, only seen the yellow Malefics. Like where are there like red and other Malefics? Might be trying to use Bodice here to just crack this, or maybe they're just wanting to send it instead. Go ahead and pitch the Earth card here so we can again make some might so that we can pressure the Arcane Cussing. And they might end up like bodicing, popping the cussing or whatever, which is fine. Again, they're not really like setting up at this point. So knowing when to pivot. If they're doing like a bunch of setup stuff, you generally want to pivot to offense. If they're not doing a bunch of setup stuff, you want to kind of be more on the defensive. It seems like they're maybe going to pop their bodice here to Arcane Cussing, or maybe they're just going to pass here. I guess both are kind of fine. So Boulder Drop can be a little bit of a liability here, but I want to go ahead and pressure that cussing now that they played it out. So we get to now swing in for 9, which is really good. And I feel like TERRA's efficiency really shines in a lot of these like AB1 matchups, just because you can like pitch an Earth card, block 2, and then also generate a Might on offense. All right, so it seems like they found their Malefic maybe just a little bit too late there, which is kind of unfortunate. But yeah, at this point, we basically should fatigue them out. Now, again, I'm not going to say this is an optimal Chane list by any stretch of the imagination. I think there are some suspect cards here, I would say. Actually looks kind of similar to a Chane list I think I was playing on stream earlier. I don't think it's like that suspect. I think they maybe just like drew kind of bad, which is, you know, a real kind of downside of playing Chane. Let's go ahead and block this out, though. Since they're not doing any setup, we're basically guaranteed to fatigue them at this rate. Like, I don't think there's any set of cards that they can draw and or banish that would actually win this game. So notably they will have go in here, but again, we don't really mind. Let's go ahead and just block 6. Keep our life total high. They can follow up with Reaping Blade here if they want to. But again, shouldn't really matter too much. They also still have access to the Ebb and Fold, which is a little bit unfortunate on their end. But yeah, I think our Arcane players lined up very nicely this game. Again, they're not always going to be lined up nicely. Like sometimes you're going to draw them when you're ahead on tempo, which is really unfortunate. But fortunately, we drew them when we kind of had the ability to kind of block out a bit. Great, and the last 2 cards are non-blood deck cards, so now they just have to deal with whatever 4 cards are in their hand, and we basically should win at this point. Again, maybe they got a little bit unlucky with the setup, but they did also pitch a lot of their setup cards, so they had like maybe the opportunity to play them. Maybe they're just a little bit of like unfortunate, whatever. But yeah, again, we should basically have this game in the back. Now, I will say that I do think that there are better chain lists out here. This is mostly just to kind of like illustrate what the matchup can be like. Again, some chain plans are very, very refined. Like I think the best chain plan into TERRA is specifically like running Pummel. And if you're running Pummel into TERRA, sitting on the Oasis also becomes like a much bigger priority. But it looks here like they're just doing like some kind of rune chance stacking thing that kind of like didn't work out for them. Right, we get the opportunity to play against another chain. We get to go on the play this time, which is really good. So that means we're going to get some additional fatigue value as well as being able to set up a really good arsenal. So awkward starting hand. I'm actually probably just going to end up sending the boulder drop here so that we can make a might token. Not super priority to like hold the boulder drop in arsenal. I guess there was also maybe merit to like discarding the fruits there and maybe like pitching the arcane polarity, which is not necessarily great in the early game. That being said, we do get 3 rune gate cards out of them, which is really good. So very high value if they're not being able to put those back in their deck. So pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and just arsenal this arcane polarity. So that block is interesting to me. Because they could have also just given us like 2 there. Maybe they were afraid of Pummel or something, which is maybe reasonable. But yeah, they definitely still have the ability to set up some scary stuff here. So Malefic is a really good start. So they get immediate 3 value that we're not really able to engage with. And they also will have Go again on the... I think it's probably a good enough excuse to go and just give the Clash of Arms here. We do want to slowly kind of walk down life totals, although being at a higher life total is definitely kind of desirable in this matchup. So I think like their best play here maybe like a Spellblade is always actually what I was about to say. So yeah, this is really nice for them here. They're going to be able to set up 3 rune chance and have a nice Soul Shackle. I think here, what is the best play? One play is to let the might go, fully block this, and then pad our life total by 2, which is reasonable. The other play is that we can send 5 at them. But since it's desirable to be at a lower life total than them, and they haven't set up a ton and our hand is not disruptive, I think I'm actually just going to go ahead and take the more value line of trying to pad our life total a bit. Like, math-wise, this turn is a little bit, like, worse. But if you think about, like, the long-term game plan, I think having a slight life buffer will actually kind of help us a bit. So now we're kind of a little bit on the defensive here. That being said, they could definitely like punish us on the next turn if they want to like set up a bunch of rune chance or whatever. But I think I do like just kind of keeping life total relatively high here. I think another thing to like disincentivize me from swinging the fist there is that they are on some number of D-reacts. So like if you swing into like a read the runes or no, sorry, not read the runes, reduce a rune chant, or if you swing into Sigil of Suffering or whatever, it's like not super great. But yeah, I think we're gonna just try to hopefully make use of our polarities here. If they don't end up attacking this though, it's gonna be really awkward. All right, fortunately, we're going to be getting a little bit of value here, and they're also pitching the Time Walk potion, which is really good for us. Yeah, we've actually seen a lot of the better threats kind of out of the way early, which is nice. Let's go ahead and take our 2 rune chant damage. Notably, they will be making 2 rune chants on the back, so they can potentially do something afterwards. We'll just go ahead and just keep our life total relatively high. We'll even play out 1 polarity now. Why not? Damage. So we do want to make sure we're staying at a lower life total, so we can go ahead and just use this other polarity now. Go ahead and block with the boulder drop because we don't really want to actively play it in this position. Again, they're not really creating a ton of setup here. Oh, interesting. They maybe are going for Pummel or something here. To go for a pummel, this is not even that bad. Okay, so we need to play out the. Sorry, we undid a lot. So I think we need to play out this polarity first. So let's go ahead and block just with the boulder drop here. Might have a pummel. They have a pummel. Not the end of the world. Let's go ahead and use one arcane polarity. And we'll go ahead and take a little bit of damage here. So we're going to be taking 7, and then we still get to use the other polarity on the back. So let's go ahead and polarity, I guess, here first. It doesn't really matter. And then we can go ahead and also... Actually, it does... Oh, hold on. It does actually kind of matter. We actually want to not polarity here. We want to discard the Siren so that we gain that life first. Just a little bit better in terms of value. And now we can polarity. So still staying above 20 in a really good spot. They use their pummel, which is also nice. So generally, Chane plays about like 1 pummel per game-ish, it kind of feels like. Yellow read the runes pretty nice there, so they get to set up some more next turn. I think we do still kind of have to just attack here, because like we're not arseling Thunderquake, it's not very good. That being said, we do get punished if they do have one of the reacts here, but that's fine. Again, we're kind of just trying to play to counter their game state more. Like, if they're going to go more mid-range and less setup, we're going to just try to mid-range with them. If they're going to go more setup, we're going to try to get more aggressive. If they're going to go defensive, we're going to try to kind of also be a little bit defensive ourselves. It's kind of like, we're basically trying to do whatever they want the least, basically, which is kind of like the interesting fun of this matchup, I guess. Fortunately for us, they have not also been hitting very well off their shackles, so they have not seen any of their blood deck cards. That being said, they did block with a lot of them in that opener hand, maybe rightfully so there, because I think that opener hand was like a little bit of a stinker. All right, looks like they're going to go ahead and use that ebb and fold to maybe just get a bit of value here. Oh, Putrid Starting is pretty good. So I wonder if they're going to sit on this or if they're going to just play something else out, because it seems like they maybe want to use this on a Runegate card, so they would have to figure out some other way to put a Runegate card or put a Runegate card in the bin. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a precarious position, I'd say. Staring at a Putrid is definitely a bit spooky. That being said, we do kind of have like a small punish here in the Glacial Footsteps, so they want to keep their cussing around. They have to give us like 3 cards here or like double the react. Fortunately, we're also like floating 1 for the Sigil of Suffering, which if they have it, we get to potentially reduce that react by 1, so we get to pop their cussing, which is great. So that's one piece of setup we basically get to remove from them. Really nice. All right, that being said, they're going to hit a million blood debt here, which is really good. And yeah, Putrid is definitely a powerhouse in this matchup. One of just the better cards in general. I was initially like down on this card because like the math on it's like kind of bad. Like, oh, it's like a 3 for 5, whatever. But like, still a 3 for 5 that you basically get to like cash between turns, which is really powerful. Let's see what they got here. Hopefully we're not getting second pummeled. If that's the case, it's a little bit more suspect. We're not seeing that in Banish yet, so definitely still live for them to play it. That being said, if they go for the Putrid, it might be like a little bit harder for them to go ahead and use. I feel like Oath is also not a super efficient use of resources, basically paying like 2 resources for 1 rune chain and then +1. Not super impressive. But it's like a decent blue in the late game for what it's worth. I just think in like the early game's kind of mid. So they're not playing out the Putrid here. Okay, they are. Oh, they're gonna chain first. Okay. Makes sense to me. So they can do this and then follow up potentially with a Deathly Delight on the back. Could be pretty scary. Let's go ahead and just pay into this as much as possible. Higher life total, player on pummel, all the good things. And let's go ahead and just use, so player on pummel, we're basically just kind of clearing our hand here. I want to be careful not to use our Civic Steps here ideally. That being said, no, I think it's still probably not worth it. They probably would just give like the Suckpuffs here, which is why I'm like somewhat tempted to try to find a spot to use it, but let's go ahead and just take 2 here. Save our armor a bit, plays our own pummel. So we're definitely kind of on the back foot here, but we just kind of need to stave off their kind of like high damage turns here. That being said, it looks like they're kind of on more of like a higher blood debt density, it seems. Oh, interesting. They're playing Soul Reaping, Banishing. Okay, seems good. Yeah, we're gonna go on the back foot here. They could definitely maybe suck cliffs here or something. I think we're fine to go ahead and just take 6. You have to be a little bit careful that we're not dying to Rune Chance, but they currently don't have a lot of setup for it. We're also taking 2 off the blood debt, which is pretty relevant. All right, so the other pummel is out of the way, thankfully. That being said, they do have double Putrid, which is a little scary. So we could be taking a lot of damage here. Especially if they're able to play out both, which is, ooh, that is now. Not unwinnable, though. Let's go ahead and see whether they're going to pop the Bodice. Maybe just a Shackle at this point. So I think this is going to be one of their last really big turns, it feels like. Maybe. They just still definitely could have a lot of gas in the tank, depending on how much regeneration is left in the deck. I feel like we've seen a decent amount of it, though. Like, we've seen the 2 red Read the Runes vanish. We've seen... I think they still have 1 yellow Read the Runes, maybe. They still have some gas left in the tank. That being said, we're going to be taking a very big hit here. Be coming in for 16? Yeah, seems pretty good. That being said, they currently don't have the ability... Oh, maybe they're going to send the Deathly here instead. So they shouldn't be pummeling us here, which is at least nice. We're going to just try to get max defense value here. So let's go ahead and cash in these 2 here. So we take 10, we could go to 2. We should probably actually give some amount of armor here, just probably not the Civic Steps. I'm going to give like the Civic Duty, I think, here. And I think I want to like leave myself open into Oasising here. They shouldn't have another pummel, I don't think. I've normally only ever seen like red pummels. So we take 8 here, we're going to 4. That turns on our Oasis, which is getting the full 5 value. Seems pretty good. Yeah, I'll give them a Vigor. Hopefully shouldn't matter too much. And we'll see what the follow-up is here. Could definitely go, like, Read the Runes into something. I don't know what Rune Chant generation they can actually have here, though. Let them Blood Dead again, though. So maybe it's just this Deathly Wail. Let's go ahead and just give the Helm here. So they're going to be taking 2 Blood Death for what it's worth, and they also use both of their really good Blood Death cards. Okay, they do have the Suck Cliffs here. Maybe means they're going to go ahead and try to send like Reaping Blade after this by popping Bodice. Maybe they have like a Read the Runes in Arsenal or something. A lot of possibilities. For what it's worth, we can still block the Reaping Blade. You do just have to be a little bit careful of... You have to just be a little bit careful of not dying here. Let's go ahead and use our first Steel Buckler, and then maybe even just our Blade Beckoner to make sure that we're getting that 1 point of value. So we are giving them Vigor Token, which can be a little bit scary. But it's a little bit less scary, I guess, than the Quicken. Time Snap Banish. Oh, these are all fantastic banishes. Okay, I think we're in pretty good shape now. So they could definitely have some really good like Rune Chant generation. Yeah, Envelop's pretty good. Could definitely still have a lot of game here. But we have the pummels out of the way. We have the Rune Chant out of the way. We have the double Putrid out of the way, which I'm kind of surprised we even lived that turn, if I'm being honest. But we do just have a lot of defensive value in the deck. Seems like they maybe wanted to. Okay, Flying High first. Okay, so they still got some action points here. So this will get go again. Didn't want to play the Malefic, which... Oh, let's go ahead and just keep paying. So we'll take 2 damage here so that our Oasis is now online. I'm partially considering giving them a Quicken token here, but I think that's still a little bit risky. We'll play it safe here. Currently no rune generation. They do still have Chane active, so they could... what could they have here? They do have the Malefic in hand, which I think they showed us. I'm trying to think what else they could possibly have in the spot. So again, this is kind of like the point of the game where we kind of pivot to defense. Making sure that we're able to stay alive. Because we're going to win on deck as long as like we make it to that point, right? Right, they chain. Good. Yep, they can do that. So they maybe just want to go with the Deathly Whale here. Okay, interesting. So they're bottom of their deck. We're going to draw 4 cards, banish 4 cards, and they're banishing a Malefic and a Develop, which is really good for us. So in this case, we just need to make sure we're not dying. What rune... like, if we give them a Quicken token here, I'm wondering if they actually do have a way to punish us. I think I'm still kind of inclined. We didn't really find a great opportunity to use our Civic stuff this game, which is okay. Let's go ahead and just fully block out. I want to make sure I'm not like dying to Rune Chance randomly. And staying healthy is important. Because if their very last turn of the game is like weak here, I think we get them. So they're banishing the 2 cards that don't matter, and they might have like 2 other Rune Gate cards if they stack this correctly. Okay, seems like it was just the... oh, it was the double Rune Rager, right? So they actually don't have any current... they only have the 1 Phantom Wraith in Blood Debt yet. Or, sorry, they only have the 1... oh, they only have the 1 Phantom Wraith in Blood Debt. Holy shit, I cannot say this sentence. Okay. They only have the 1 Phantom Wraith in Blood Debt yet. Or... oh, still can't say it. They only have 1 Phantom Wraith in Blood Debt currently. So that's really good for us. And they also don't have pumps. We finally got... sorry, I've been recording for like... going on 2.5 hours just to make sure I'm getting like some good quality games. So my brain is like, kind of starting to lose it, but that's okay. So yeah, pretty good hand. I don't think they can kill us from this position unless they have some really insane setup or like a 3rd pummel or something crazy. Right, seems like they're just going to opt for the Deathly instead. We can pretty safely just go ahead and take the damage here. I guess we should probably play around pummel, right? Should we? Probably not. I think I'll give you even a Civic Sept here. They have a yellow pummel, so be it. We go to 1. Should still be totally fine here. Yeah, I think we should be fatiguing them unless I like horribly miscalculated something. Alright, they're just gonna follow up with the 2nd Deathly Whale. So we block this, they don't make any Rune Chance off of both Deathly Whales, and then they can't play that last Phantom Wraith. So I think this is basically game, and then we also have to make sure to block the Renounce on the Reaping Blade, but I think we basically just barely got there. And yeah, this is kind of how the matchup goes. Again, like, I think we played 2 games of this, and we saw in the first game, I think we were able to get a little bit more aggressive than this game. But in this game, we eventually kind of just hit a point. We didn't really see a ton of our really good disruption, unfortunately. But we did see our Arcane players pretty early, and they did end up trying to go for tempoing us as opposed to like stacking us. But yeah, it seems like they may be off it. But yeah, that's kind of the Chane matchup goes. Again, the Chane matchup is very complex in terms of like, you have to think about what you're drawing. You have to think about like your draws in relation to their draws and like where they're at in the game. Do they want to tempo you? Do they want to stack you? It's a very complicated matchup, but again, there's a lot of variance in Chane and a lot of variance in this deck as well. So like, I'd say it's a very high variance matchup that you can definitely like skill gap. You know, if you have a lot of reps into it, I think it's like actually a very favorable matchup. Maybe not like completely like one-sided for TERRA, but it definitely feels like Chane has a lot of play. But you definitely do have a lot of agency in this matchup. It feels like. Right, go ahead and play against another Chane here. They're gonna have us go first, which again I still kind of question. I guess we'll get as many Chane games as we're kind of handed here because I think Chane is like the de facto. I don't know if it's the best deck. I think it's still kind of the best deck. Like, you lose to a lot of the more aggro strategies, but it's kind of like a format warping deck in a lot of ways. Like, I think that very good chains will make it to top 8s. You're going to probably have to beat a lot of good chains on your way to like winning an event and stuff like that. So it's a matchup that's definitely like worth showcasing, maybe even 3 times here. But yeah, we'll go ahead and see how this goes. Okay, so kind of a mid start from us, but we do at least get to Arsenal Pummel, which is definitely nice. Could definitely like worst case scenario would be like reduce here, and they just go to like set up a rune chant for 1 card. But I think we're still always attacking in here just so we can set up a might token. Okay, and it seems like they're gonna just go ahead and give us 2 cards, which is perfect. Now we get sit on Pummel, and we're gonna try to find some of our better cards to Pummel. So that's Humble, that's Boulder Drop's not one of the better ones, but Humble is definitely a better one. So our hope here is they maybe take either a setup turn or they give us like a little bit of space so that we can just play or block with like Boulder Drop, maybe send the Humble Pummel and just keep them off a Soul Shackle for a turn. Give me our strat here. That being said, they're going to play the Arcane Cussing. I've kind of got down on this card on Chane for a while. Like, I think it's like the value proposition is strong, right? You get like 1 for 3, kind of on demand go again with the Bloodthorn Bodice, but like if you draw it at certain points of the game where you're not able to deal damage and you don't want to crack your bodice, it can definitely be really awkward. Like, I think the later on you see it, the better it gets, which is kind of interesting. All right, so here we're gonna take a little bit of damage just so that we make sure we can play our Humble. Let's go ahead and just block with the Boulder Drop here. We get pummeled, not the end of the world. And we're gonna just try to hopefully humble them next turn and keep them off of setting up their rune chant stuff. Looks like they're gonna have to actually pitch here to play the cussing, which is kind of awkward. This seems a little suspect. Oh, we'll roll with it. So, not using the resource. Okay, interesting play. I guess they maybe just wanted to make sure they were getting the value out of the cussing, which is somewhat reasonable. I feel like maybe just not a great spot to play the cussing there, if I'm being real. It seemed questionable, at least. And that's kind of like the downside of cussing, is that if you find it early and you don't really want to use the bias resource, it becomes very, very awkward to play out. We're just going to go for the pummel here. Yeah, D-reacts, that's fine. Yeah, we still have the 1 floating in case they do go for like a sigil or whatever. And if they don't go for a sigil, then we just deal 11 to them. So I think we showcased a lot of the differences in how these matchups can go. This is one of the matchups where we're going to try to be on the offense and just try to kill them as fast as possible. They definitely like, we're gonna maybe see if we can pivot between the 2 game plans, but like for now we're gonna go try to go full aggro, especially if they're gonna try to just stack a bunch of rune. Let's go ahead and just overpitch to the Titan's Fist here. Because we're actually overpitching, they might not suspect the pummel, because they might be thinking we're going to try to like clear cards out of hand. Fortunately, we do have the pummel here, so I'm just going to go for it. Try to put them to 1 so that any blood that they're cashing is a little bit more awkward. That being said, they do have the reduce, which is very nice. So they are on a healthy little pile of rune chants here. That being said, they have also not been super proactive, so we do have a bit of time, and they're only on 1 shackle, which is great. Deathly Will is a nice hit there. So this is a little bit awkward. Since we're kind of far ahead here, the arcane polarities and the oases and stuff are definitely a little bit awkward. So we need to essentially figure out a way to take 13 damage here, which might be reasonable given their setup here. Because we have 8 rune chants here, we have a bunch on the Deathly Will on top of it. Could definitely be representing a pummel here. Yeah, let's go ahead and just take some damage. Go ahead and skip all the runes. We want to make sure we're just taking some damage to put us at a little bit of a lower life total. And this is going to be coming in for 9. We can block 4, which would put us to 5 exactly, which means that we can then polarity. If they do go for a pummel, we can also block that as well. So we're still in a pretty good shape here. So we will go ahead and take the Deathly Wheel damage, which will allow us to Polarity this turn. Again, we're just holding on to a little bit of armor. Again, 5, or we're functionally at 9 here, is a pretty safe life total, especially when they're only on 2 shackles. Right, they are going to go ahead and go for the additional Rune Chane here. So this is like a little bit interesting. So let's take our 1 point of damage here so that we can actually pad our life total with the Oasis. There is definitely some merit here to potentially like pitching the other Oasis, send Fist, that we're keeping them off 1 card. That being said, they have shown that they're on some number of D-reacts, so maybe attacking them is actually not the best here. Maybe we should just be saving the other Oasis. The thing I actually like, maybe holding on to the other Oasis in our... So we'll go ahead and pad our life total perfectly here. And again, sometimes these polarities can be a little bit awkward, especially if you like draw them together with the Oasis, but you can still probably find a way to take 20 damage or so if you're playing against Chane, right? But yeah, we're just keeping all of our armor. So unfortunately, we have not really found a great opportunity to use our civic steps, which again is definitely sometimes a bit difficult depending on how the chain kind of starts out. For what it's worth, they're also not on the normal boots. They're not on the Sutcliffe's Suede Hides or whatever it's called. So they do not have like a inherent source of go again on their equipment suite. That being said, they always have it on Chane. But yeah, we should be able to hopefully kind of stave off a little bit of this damage here. Let's go ahead and just pay into... Kind of tempted to actually just float 1 here, although it is kind of like giving face up Oasis in a weird way. So opponent still has 4 cards in hand, which is definitely scary. However, whether or not they're able to fully capitalize on all 4 of those cards is... Yes, they do still have the Ebb and Fold for what it's worth. So I think we should just try to play around Pummel is I think the main thing we're trying to go for here. They could still kill us here. Definitely possible. Like there's probably something they can do. They just don't have a ton of setup currently. Kind of feels like a Pummel. So I want to kind of just clear my hand as much as possible. Yeah, with 5 card chain hand, but they might not really be able to use it here. We'll see. So the question now is, do we want to even use the Oasis? I think the answer is probably no. They have the pummel, and we just take the damage. Like, it's just vanilla damage, basically. And I think let's go ahead and just give up a charge of our Buckler and then our Helm. Just give up the tempo a little bit here. Again, we're kind of maybe in a spot where they can kind of capitalize on us taking an off turn. But we'll see. They did technically not use 2 cards that they had access to, so they might not be able to do it again if they're stuck on like D-React or something. And we'll make them work for it. All right, fantastic set of banishes. This to me, so we know they're on Pummel now, so not all chains are on Pummel, which to me indicates that this might be what the arsenal is. And maybe that's why they didn't go for it last turn. Again, getting fortunate with some of the chain banishes here. This will have go again. Let's go ahead and just keep blocking 6. If they want to pummel, we have a staunch. Again, our life total is high enough where we can probably stave off a pummel. Okay, and it's the Spellblade Assault here instead. So let's go ahead and just take the 1 Rune Chane damage and then staunch this. It could definitely be setting up a pretty wide banish on a future turn, but we're kind of just trying to run them out of the Rune Chane generators, which is another kind of way that you can kind of get them stuck with a bunch of blood debt, and then they can't actually make runes to kind of back it up. But yeah, this is why Oasis is so powerful in this matchup, because if they are sitting on Pummel, then one of the ways that we can kind of deal with that is Oasis, right? Because it covers the breakpoint quite nicely. All right, Polarity is fantastic here. All right, Putrid is a nice hit. That being said, they currently don't have a Rune Gate card, but they could easily get one with the Ebb and Fold. So yeah, we're not completely out of the woods here yet. They've not been hitting particularly well on the banishes, I will say. Like there are definitely there's some Chane games where like this is just draw a card every turn, right? That's I guess like some of the variants you see, right? So we want to try to block this for 7, which is currently awkward. Thinking through the block, I think we want to just perfect cover this, right? Let's go ahead and pitch an Earth card. I guess we actually do want to take 1 point of damage here, so that our polarity is online if we need it. Now let's go ahead and give the Civic Duty here, and I'm still really hesitant to give the Civic Steps at this point in the game. Go ahead and give the Civic Duty and Steel Blade Steel. Oh my god, I can't say it again. Steel Braid Buckler, so that if they want to pummel the Spellblade Assault, then we do have the Oasis to prevent the discard. So a really nice lineup here, and this is why we run Oasis in the deck. Very, very powerful tool. Go ahead and cover that Spellblade Assault nicely here. So it seems like that was their arsenal the past couple turns, which is why they haven't been able to play it out. So again, knowing like what your opponent could possibly have, and like again the Blood Debt Banish revealing that they're a Pummel Chain, which is like one of the more, I guess, prevalent versions of right now, is very powerful. So we have 2 additional Rune Chains plus another 3 here. So since we're sending the Humble, I'm almost okay giving the Civic Steps. Weird as that is. Go ahead and just take some damage here. I want to just try to put them off tempo. I think we might be able to tempo them from this point. So let's actually give the Civic Steps here. Maybe even just cash in the Blade Beckner Helm. And then we're going to be sending in this Humble for functionally like 7 points of value. And we also get the polarity, so we're still sitting at functionally 8 here, which is real nice. Yeah, we're in a really good spot. And then is this a react deck? So they are on some number reduced, so definitely attacking is a little bit suspect. That being said, they didn't make the Runehold release. So if they do have a reduce here, it's not going to be as good as if they did have a Rune Chant on the board. Yeah, we're in a really good spot here. We're coming in for 7. They can de-react this, that's fine. Maybe they just kind of saw the writing on the wall there, and that hand is definitely quite rough. Yeah, there are a lot of approaches. So I played, I think, 3 Chane games. We won all of them, but all of the approaches to the game are very different, and that's kind of one of the complexities I guess I kind of want to showcase on TERRA, is that the game plans do feel very different. You have to figure out the point of the game in which you can pivot between offense and defense, and just knowing like to play around specific cards. Like playing around Pummel is very important, playing around them having a setup turn is very important, and having like a proactive, disruptive game plan is very important. And that's kind of like one of the advantages into Chane that TERRA has, I think, a little bit over Oldhim. That being said, Oldhim does have Ice React, so you can make the bigger turns a little bit smaller. But yeah, in general, I think that TERRA does have maybe a little bit of an edge into the in this matchup compared to Oldhim. But yeah. But yeah, that's going to be it for the Chane matchup. Let's go ahead and showcase some other decks. All right, let's go ahead and showcase the Briar matchup. So I think, what do I have in the Briar? I want to go second, mainly just so that we have like a little bit of tempo and we can disrupt them. Let's go ahead and choose the Briar board. I think first is also like somewhat valid, mainly because this is like a hard fatigue matchup. That being said, I think this is one of probably the easier matchups that TERRA has, just because like there's kind of no real way for them to break through a lot of defenses. But yeah, I think this is one of the more kind of popular aggro decks at this point, so we'll go ahead and showcase it. I think Lupine is our kind of resident Briar player, so I've been talking with him about a lot about this matchup because I'm currently, I think, 21-1 to Briars at the time of recording, and the one Briar I lost to was doing like this weird like fatigue strat basically. So not like a normal Briar game plan, which I think our opponent might just be on like kind of like, it looks a little more like an aggro Briar, at least based on the bracers of belief here. There is like a different kind of Briar where they use like Plume of Evergrowth and like play a bunch of like the taller attacks or whatever, but I don't know how real that actually is. This is actually looking like, I think there's like a recent Briar list that did super well at like a tournament or something. This is kind of looking like that list, at least. Let's go ahead and just staunch this so that we are generating a mite on the back and perfectly covering here. And then if we do get lucky, we're also going to be making a mite here and then gaining life, which is really nice. And we can just go ahead and block this Jockey quick here. So fully covered, and we also generated 2 points of value, which is insane. What is the follow-up play here? They don't currently have an arsenal, so disabled, like, kind of whatever. Honestly, maybe you just want to even arsenal to staunch here, so let's maybe just, like, overpitch. Be fine. We can save a 4 block for later in the game. And this is kind of like a fatigue matchup. Like, you can actually just hard fatigue this deck, so, like, it's kind of okay to not attack them. That being said, I think Renowned Scrancher is, like, mildly disruptive, so sending it means that they're kind of incentivized to cover it, which means they're not taking damage, which means we can still stay at kind of like a lower life total, which is kind of cool. And let me read my notes again for this matchup. Curious, what did I say? I said, the freest matchup of your life. I'm currently 21-0. Okay, that's actually wrong because I'm currently 21-1 because I played into a weird version of Briar. Taunts is really powerful in this matchup because they're often running some number of pumps. Being at a lower life total is desirable to stop Scar for Scar and turn on Oasis, and the same rules apply to Aurora. Careful of burn up shock and lightning press. Okay, seems good. Just reminding myself of the game plan because I want to make sure my notes are kind of up to date so that someone can go take this to a tournament and win with it, because I think this deck is that good that you could probably, at the bare minimum, top 8. But if not, I think you could also probably do very well. I think you can definitely top 8 with this deck. I don't know if you can win like a full-on Battle Harden or whatever they're doing right now. Let's go ahead and just like block 6 here and just see what happens. If they have the press, then we can just launch it. They don't have the press, then we don't staunch. You can find me. Maybe that was some kind of bluff or whatever. Doesn't really matter too much. Let's go ahead and just send in the no. Let's go. Actually, so we're not going to be able to gain life here, right? Because of the replay. Let's go ahead and pitch the fruits here, so that we're able to pick a mite on the back end, keep some floating resources. Seems reasonable. So let me actually look up what Briar. I think Lupine sent this to me at one point. I see. Briar. I think this is like a recent list. Hold on, let me look in like our Discord. I recognize the yellow flourish and the captain's call. I think those are like very distinct to that list. Oh, I think it's this list. Hold on, let me see. Let me pull this up. Yeah, it's the 2 reds captain call, the yellow flourishes, and then the reinforce and the arcane polarity. So again, I don't think this deck really still has like the same issue into TERRA. So this is the second place from a calling list. So yeah, this is a really good list. Again, I still think we have a really good game plan into this deck, and I'll try to kind of show this off here. But yeah, this is going to be basically a hard fatigue matchup. Let's take a look at what cards they have in this deck. So it's like pretty much your normal standard Briar cards. They do have the Scar for Scar, so being at a lower life total is desirable. They are running Sigil Sufferings as well. So let's go ahead and just be really passive here. So we'll just go ahead and keep blocking a bit of damage. They have a Lightning Press on top, which is good info for next turn. Let's go ahead and just like block with a Boulder Drop here. Again, I'm kind of just biased towards blocking because we want to just block as much as possible. We can go ahead and just give another 3 points to the Lightning Surge here. Maybe they want to do something else here. Alright, so they have the Snatch instead. They want to Arsenal the Lightning Surge. We actually just take the damage here for what it's worth. They'll draw the Lightning Press, but they won't be able to play it. Fine. We can actually afford to take 1 damage off the Snatch here. And again, leaking damage is good because it means that we'll be able to walk down life totals a lot nicer. Keep up the hammer. So Lightning Press we know is in their hand, and then they probably have a Lightning Surge in Arsenal. So we want to be really careful about burn up shock. Burn up shock lightning press is one of the ways that they can definitely get a really big chunk of damage in. Oh, we have the Arc and Polarity, which should be pretty good. That being said, our hand's like a little bit awkward here, but we can probably figure out a way to use at least one of the staunch responses, if not both of them. All right, so you're going to send in with Scar for Scar. Let's go ahead and just pass and see what they do. We know they have the press in hand, so we could definitely pretty easily staunch this if we wanted to. If they don't want to go for the press, that's also fine, because we'll then be at a lower life total. Yeah, just making sure we're playing super passively here. We don't want them to be taking too much damage, especially in the early game. All right, so here comes the Surge. And we'll say no blocks here. So if they do go for the press here, like kind of still inefficient. They're only leaking like 2 damage. So I think we'll go and give the baby staunch. That being said, if they have like a snatch follow-up and they can press it, I guess that's like a little bit awkward, but then we still have the answer to that. Okay, seems like they're going to just go ahead and use Lightning Press, which is very clean for a staunch. Or maybe they want to Arsenal it, also fine. We'll go ahead and just pay the staunch here. Still efficient to do this. They're pressing this now. Okay, maybe not. Okay, yeah, it's maybe a better play to hold on to that for a turn. Yeah, we want to make sure we're just kind of walking down the life totals as much as possible. We're now at a lower life total, which is good because it means their next Scar for Scar is going to be dead. Also means I don't know what our opponent's trying. Okay, maybe just passing. They should still have 2 burn up shocks left in the deck, and also maybe some number of D-reacts, at least based on this current list. So I assume they're either running the reinforces, the sigil sufferings, or some other number of defensive cards. That's kind of one of the problems with Briar is like if I just block out, there's not a ton you can really do. All right, so they do have a really nice combo here. I think they probably don't want this. I think they only meant to play out one of the burn up shocks because I think they only played the shock half of one because they played them at the same time. Okay, they figured it out. Cool. We're going to take here off this first one. This is definitely a bit scary here. That being said, we do have the face-up lightning press, so we should be able to inform our blocks. That being said, we're going to have to overblock pretty severely here, I assume. Okay, that being said, if they just go for a rabble here, like if they don't have 2 attacks here, then the block here is very easy. I think we just give our full hand, right? We have our full hand because they cannot push through this damage. They could push it through with a Reaping Blade, but that's fine. They can't Lightning Press Reaping Blade, and we can block it. Okay, seems good to me. I don't really follow the Lightning Press there. Okay, they realize that. So they can crack Garland of Spring to at least threaten 2 burn-up shocks, but again, we still have the armor to cover that. And we're also going to be gaining life off the Polarity here. Okay, seems good. It's actually kind of funny because we didn't use the Steel Blade. We actually probably could have used a point of armor here instead of a card. It still like kind of works out. Let's go ahead and just give up. You can even give up like 2. Go ahead and cover the damage. And then we'll go back up to 19. And this is why this matchup is like, I think it's kind of unwinnable if you know what to do. Like, I think Briar is unfortunately just like 0% based on how the decks are constructed. That being said, I think there is a Briar deck that can beat this deck. And that deck basically is just 2-card 8 the deck. That deck can do pretty well. Like, there was a deck that I played against, I think pretty recently, that was running just like evergreens basically. To like set up like this late game loop. That being said, I don't think this deck can run evergreens, at least the way it's constructed, because eventually you will like you're gonna have to like pitch it or like play it in really awkward scenarios that you don't really want to play it. Arsenaling it's a pain. There's a lot of downsides to Evergreen and I guess these kind of style lists. All right, so it looks like our opponent has a second strike in hand. Again, we're just gonna play super passive. Go ahead and block with the arcane damage with the Autumn's Touch. They maybe have like a lightning presser here, something here. Again, no real reason to attack since we're kind of winning on just the fatigue game here anyways. All right, seems like they opted to go ahead and use that press there, which I guess maybe just want to get it out of Arsenal or something. But yeah, we'll go ahead and just stay healthy. So they should still have some number of D-Reacts, at least if this is the exact same list that I'm looking at here, which it looks identical based on the Captain's Calls and the Yellow Flourish. Yeah, there's one of the Captain's Calls. There's a Lightning Surge to follow it up. Good. So I think we want to end up taking 3 here so that our, maybe even 2 is better. Let's actually maybe go ahead and just give them a Civic Steps. Like, I don't think they're going to really be able to capitalize on it. You can have a little Quicken as a treat. I think that's fine. And this is going to help us turn on our Oasis so that maybe getting a bit more value out of those. Again, our main game plan here is to run them out of threats, so we want to incentivize them to play cards. I'm actually wondering if this is the same list because we still have not seen any number of their E-Reacts here. They're going to pitch the read. So this is, I think, the exact same deck. Cool. Well, that will at least give us some good data here. We could prevent this. We could also just, like, take a bit of damage here. Let's go ahead and prevent it. Oasis blocking 3 is, like, fine. Then we can maybe just even play out this Boulder Drop next turn. We don't really need to play out the Boulder Drop, though. It's not really helping us necessarily progress the game plan. Like, in Ironic, we might just be better to send Fist here, assuming that they're on some number of... we saw the Reinforced line, obviously, but they're probably also on, like, Sigil Sufferings. They want to use 2 Sigil Sufferings to cover this, I'm thinking. So we'll leak a little bit more damage. Okay, just opting to use the 1 there. So what arcane damage effects do they actually have left in the deck? I think they might be out. Or they might have another Sigil Suffering. That's probably what we should try to play towards. So let's go ahead and just give a Thunderquake here. I think they have 1 more press we have to worry about, which is fine. We can leak a little bit of damage from a press. Not the end of the world. But sure, they got 4 on us. Yeah, I think we actively want to attack into a Sigil Suffering so that we can proc our Arcane Polarity here. Right, they have a Static Shock to follow it up. They played a Lightning card, so actually this is another way we can proc it, which is kind of funny. So we could actually just accept the 1 damage here. That being said, maybe it's better to try to force the other proc. We also don't really have to give them the Quicken. Let's maybe give them the Civic Duty instead. Do a little something like this. Again, the main appeal of Briar is that you'll beat a lot of decks that are very slower. Like, I think she actually has, like, a pretty good spread into, like, a lot of the Guardians into Chane because you can just be a bit more aggressive. But I think her biggest struggle is just, like, she cannot beat Block Slop in this current configuration. She just cannot beat, like, Block Slop in this current configuration. That's at least my opinion. At least the games I've played have not felt particularly close, at least on the fatigue front. Eventually, she'll get to a point where she kind of just, like, runs out of cards. All right, there's the Reinforced line, so they'll block that nice and efficiently. And we'll just sit on this Arcane Polarity until they eventually have to Sigil us here. And yeah, I think at this point we have, like, I don't think they have enough damage in the deck to actually kill us at this point. Oh, we have 10 block here, we have 8 block here. game pad our life total, which is disgusting. So go ahead and just block 10 off 4 cards, but we're like only using 2 cards from our deck. Super efficient. That being said, they will be able to punish us for the 1 little point of value we gave them there. That's fine. Go ahead and just cash in our buckler. Our opponent has 2 more hands until they eventually die. So what are the last cards in their deck? They have 1 Arcanic Shockwave. They have 1 Jack Be Quick, and then 1 more Nimblism, maybe. There's a Nimblism, also Yellow Flourish. 1 more Skizzik, it looks like. Alright, so 10 block here. Could actually even take the damage off this if we wanted to. But maybe safer to just give this. I think we're really scared of at this point. They use both snatches. No real on hits. I guess I think it's fine. We can even give them civic steps here. It's probably okay. Alright, so there's their Sigil Suffering. So they definitely have 1 last one in deck. Let's go ahead and just take 3 here. And again, perfect opportunity to use our Quicken token because the action point there didn't matter. And now we can just start sending in for 5 or 4 or whatever. That should basically close out the game. I think so. They do have like Blade Beckoner, but they're not going to have enough time to use it. Or they maybe want to do a Sigil Suffering there, which is kind of funny because we do kind of still have the punish there. So I fully expect them to Sigil here, in which case we will just go ahead and take that damage. And Polarity. Right, there's their Arcanic, but they are out of action points. Blocking. And again, at this point, they are basically out of steam. Go ahead and just keep setting up our Might token. I don't really think it matters there whether or not we do the Macho or whatever. Functionally the same. Even Arsenal the Macho if we really want to. We probably have enough cards in deck. And then that can be our little win con. Good. And their opponent just has maybe 1 Jack Be Nimble left in Arsenal, and that's pretty much it. Or is a reinforced line. Okay, makes sense. But yeah, Briar matchup I think is basically unwinnable for them, which is one of the appeals. If Briar is one of the best decks in the format, and you can beat the best deck in the format, you can beat Chane, you can beat Ira. I still need to actually showcase an Ira game, I think. But yeah, we'll go ahead and try to see if we can beat the best decks in the format. But yeah, this is one of the lists that did very well in the Calling Valencia. I think Lupine was working on like a matchup guide for this. But again, I think fatigue is like 0% for this deck. I think it's like actually unwinnable. But I think at some point I might actually play test with Lupine because I think he might still think there's some kind of plan here. But anyways. Playing against Kayo, this is definitely like a little bit of a more borderline matchup. Go ahead and use the Kayo board here. Again, we're just trying to kind of get them to a fatigue state. 1 card I might actually consider here is the Turn Timber. I think that actually might be a little bit different format. Let's actually bring the Turn Timber over like a Humble. I think that's reasonable. But yeah, we're not running the fumbles in this matchup. I'm actually going to go ahead and update the Cyber for that real quick. Where's Kayo? I think it's actually, I made like a slight change to the deck list, so I think the Turn Timber is maybe a little bit better in this matchup just because they do have a lot of taller attacks. Okay, but that should be updated now. Cool. So what do I say about the Kayo matchup? So it's very similar to Briar, except you are more likely to get fatigued, and make sure you are getting your Titan's Fist swings in, and try to Arsenal Staunches for pulping. So your value math is always going to be the most important thing here. Ooh, these are some nice sleeves. I wonder where these are from. Looks like it's maybe some... This is like Blue Pitch? Might be Blue Pitch. So it looks like they're just sending in with the Savage Feast here. I want to have Siren's Call, Siren's Safe Harbor is like a proactive play next turn. Like halfway tempted to even just give the turn here. So they shouldn't have an action point. I think I'm just going to go ahead and just block 5 here. Unfortunately, we are losing the Earth card, but we should always be able to play a Siren's Call because we're going to be drawing 2 cards. And then we can also Arsenal, or not, sorry, not Siren's Call, Sirens of Safe Harbor. We should always be able to play it if we draw like an Earth card off the top. That would obviously be ideal. All right, looks like they're just going to set up an Agile windup on top of it. Oh, so now we can actually play Renounce Grandeur instead. That's actually way better, especially against our Kayo opponent here. Now we can pitch the Sirens here to actually generate another Might, which is pretty high value. So yeah, this will probably demand at least 2 cards from, or actually they do have the Knucklehead, so they can potentially give like 1 card plus 3 here to stop the on-hit. But we're in a really good spot here. We're going to be arsenaling the Turn Timber, we're going to be pitching the Sirens, so we're getting like a 10 value turn cycle basically. So really, really good. I guess it's also maybe a 9 value turn cycle because we technically made like the last turn. Whatever, you know what I mean. Oh, this mat is also kind of like a big Viscera. Pretty cool. I like our mat better for what it's worth, though. Alright, we got our blocks, so as expected, they're just going to... Ooh, we actually win the Clash of Might, which is kind of disgusting. So it typically doesn't happen against our brute opponents normally, or at least a Kayo. Historically, Guardian is fairly bad at clashing the Kayo, but it seems like we actually got an initial point of value there, which is really nice. All right, another perfect hand for the Turn Timbers here. It is a little bit awkward. Notably, we do actually have the Decompose for the Summer's Fall, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I think I'm just going to go ahead and cash in the Turn Timber now. We can also potentially use our Ironhide Gauntlets this turn since we're pitching a non-Earth card. But we'll go ahead and just block slop it up, block 8. It's pretty good. I've seen like occasionally some random like pummel stuff coming out of some of these Guardian lists. I've also not seen that in a pretty long time, so I'm kind of doubtful. All right, Bare Fangs will also mill them a card here, which is great. So let's go ahead and just give up the Ironhide Gauntlet, stay relatively healthy, and then we get to also just swing 6 on the back with our Titan's Fist, which is kind of disgusting. Again, this matchup is about whittling them down. You can't, I don't think, just fully fatigue them by blocking out like you can do against like Briar and some of the other kind of like Rune Blades. So you do have to like be proactive and make sure you're trying to get your Titan's Fist swings in here. But yeah, making sure you're getting at least some chip value out of them is really important, just so that you're progressing the game state towards a point where the Titan's Fist is going to be coming in for like 2 cards worth of value, right? But I would say we're in a really good spot here. We have basically all of our armor. We lost 2 points of armor on our arms, but we still have a lot of time to go ahead and use up the rest of our armor. And we're basically like 9 points ahead-ish. Maybe even more if you count the armor usage. Maybe it's like 12 points ahead or something like that. But really good spot. And we're also doing pretty well, looks like, on the fatigue value as well. I think we're maybe a couple cards up. So we're winning on both cards and life here. That being said, I think they do still kind of have the tempo in this position. So it could be still in a little bit of a scary spot. Yeah, this mat is like really sick. I wonder if this is like something that was like commissioned for a pitch or something. A really cool mat. All right, get him down to 14. We get another card blocked out of them. Fantastic. And I think here, while I'm tempted to go ahead and use the Staunch, I think I'm actually just going to go ahead and let them use the Ball Breaker. They haven't discarded a card, so it's only coming in for 3. And they could also just be arsenaling here. I think if they have the opportunity to swing the weapon, though, it's like slightly better to do so here. Depends on what their hand is. But maybe they're just going to opt for the Arsenal, which is also very fine with us. We get to Arsenal our Staunch in response. Our Staunch response in response, which is going to... but yeah, we're still doing pretty well here. Again, I think this is one of the decks that is like a little bit scarier for this deck. I put it in medium because I think that there are some end states that they can get to where they are starting to fatigue you out. That being said, if you get like a really big tempo lead like we did, I think it's a little bit harder for them. It seems like, unfortunately, we also have another staunch on top, which is probably not ideal. Generally, you want to try to space out your staunches as much as possible, although sometimes your deck is not always kind to you. This is a fine hand for just blocking out, though. Even double staunch here if they go like 2 for 7 into 2 for 7 and then save 2 block cards for later in the game. All right, so this looks like an opportunity probably for them to pop their beaten trackers here. Yeah, seems pretty good. They're going to be drawing a card from this. They're also going to be getting functionally go again. Seems like a really clean block on the staunch here at least, so we're going to go ahead and just cash that in. I think I will pitch a clash here just so that we can keep sending the fist, because the fist is how we're going to basically win the game. And I'm also kind of curious why they're on Ball Breaker over Mandible Claw. Maybe just to get the +1 value because you have go again a lot of the time, but sometimes like in Kayo you don't always have the go again, it feels like. So a lot of flexibility in this hand. We can either block 4 with the Clash Shield, which is probably what we're going to do if they're going to run Ruptured. And then we can also just like re-Arsenal Staunch. Again, I went off the Arsenal Staunch just so that I could play around Wreck Havoc, which is sometimes a card these KOs play. It's not completely unheard of. But yeah, we're continuing to basically stall out the game, go card positive, and then just like block out basically whatever they're doing. Again, I think the more competitive KO lists are generally running Mandible Claw. Maybe that matters like a little bit more in this matchup. At least, from my perspective as the TERRA player, let them go a little bit wider. But again, I think that the core game plan is still largely the same versus whether they're on Ball Breaker or Mandible Claw. I think they just maybe have like a little bit of an easier time. All right, let's go ahead and use our excuse staunch response. We want to be really careful with Civic Step here as well. We'll go ahead and use that staunch. Pitching the Earth card so that we're also making a Might, so we're getting basically 2 card 8 value on defense, which is really cool. Although I guess an eighth of it is technically offensive value. We also saw Pulping, which is another card that can be pretty good in this matchup. I'm debating whether or not I actually want to take 6 here, just so that we can potentially Arsenal Siren's Safe Harbor, which is sometimes pretty good if you run into like a situation where you have like an Earth Blue that you want to pitch. So I'm thinking about that here. Also debating whether or not this is actually a good turn to use Civic Steps. I kind of don't think it is, right? Go ahead and just take our 6 damage here. Again, we want to just be keeping the tempo with the Boulder Drop next turn, I think. Right, they're going to pop that for 3 additional resources. There's also like a real opportunity for us to potentially just like go on the defensive here. Like we could also just like get rid of the Sirens and just like keep our arsenal clear, which I think is also reasonable. I think I like blocking with the Sirens here just to stay a little bit on the healthier side. The life totals have eaten out a little bit, but we now have the tempo, which is really good. They're basically converting our life lead into kind of a pretty substantial tempo lead. And again, we want to make sure we're always sending something in this matchup because they can get to a state where they fatigue us at some point. It's definitely possible. That being said, we're only taking like 1 card out of our opponent's hand here, so they still get to keep a 4-card hand, which is quite nice. Test. Right, looks like they're just going to give 2 cards from hand, which is also acceptable. This also might be 3. Is this 3 floating? Maybe it's 3 floating. Maybe it's not blue pitch. I mean, it's kind of like the same logo, right? Kind of. Okay, let's go ahead and maybe just use the Clash of Arms here and make sure we're getting that value. And we can just send another Boulder Drop next turn, which will, or should at least demand another card from hand. Sirens of Safe Harbor is like surprisingly okay to Arsenal, even if it's just the blue one. Mainly just because like if you draw like blue Earth card, it's slightly better value to get like 5 value kind of than the Titan's Fist. We'll go ahead and Arsenal here. It's not like the best Arsenal in the world, but we'll probably get an opportunity to play it out and shouldn't be too much of a liability. All right, so it looks like we lost the Clash of Agility, but we have an Oasis on top, which is good information. We do still have 2 Oasis in the deck, so if we actually get those to line up, that'll be pretty nice for next turn. Most likely here, what the play is going to be is probably just try to block 6, and then maybe just send the Sirens, make a Might, and then Arsenal Oasis for next turn. Depends how crazy this turn ends up being. So this actually might be our first excuse to go ahead and give them a Quicken token here. I don't think there's anything that can actually punish us here, unless I'm missing something because they have no float. They want to send ideally a card in hand. I think this makes sense. Could actually give up the Renounced Grandeur first, just so that we can hold on to a blue in case we want to Oasis for some reason. But yeah, I think the Civic Steps makes a bit of sense here because they always want to just send the Ball Breaker here or whatever. So these are like kind of the good opportunities to use Civic Steps. Is kind of like when your opponent is in a situation where they're forced to play a card, or like they want to play a card, or else they're like losing value. That's like the best opportunity to go ahead and use the Quicken token here. That being said, they could punish us by like me discarding Mighty Wind Up and like arsenaling and passing or whatever. So there are definitely like ways they can get around this. Oh, and actually, that's funny enough. Like that is, I guess, one of the things they can have. But I still think it's correct there for what it's worth to give the Quicken. So in that case, they did punish us. What do we want to do as a response? I think we're still just like sending. Interesting. So the funny thing about Flourish, actually, if you didn't know this about the deck, is Flourish does not work on Titan's Fist unless you have a Might token. So we unfortunately can't do that here. So I think the best value line is unfortunately just sending Sirens of Safe Harbor. That being said, we should have another Oasis somewhere in the deck. But opponent actually got us pretty good there. That being said, we're still kind of at least pretty good on the tempo front here. So we're either demanding another card or we're demanding that they give us like some armor here. Again, they could also drop to 1, but then that starts to get a little bit precarious. But yeah, they definitely actually punished us. Funny enough, with the Mighty Wind Up there, which is kind of hilarious. I guess we could have tracked that, whatever. But like, I still think in general, like, if they, I'm kind of actually happier that they did that as opposed to like Ball Breaker, because then we just have to like give another 3 there. Obviously, we're kind of like already prepared to block 3 for what it's worth, but I still think this is kind of worth it. But yeah, well played from our opponent there. Still sitting at a relatively higher life total, and then we also do have a bit of fatigue advantage as well. And then we're also sitting on basically all of our armor. All right, we found double Oasis, which is also very, very good. Bear Fang's a little bit scary. So how do they punish us for giving a Quicken token here? They use the other Mighty Wind, or they pitch the other Mighty Wind up, so they can't do that. So I think this is actually a good opportunity to go ahead and just cash this in. The question is there anything else we want to be doing? I think we're just double Oasising this. Seems fine. Yeah, we don't really need to get the life gain value out of Oasis. It's sometimes more of a liability than not, but we're at least getting like functionally 3-card 8 block here. I also toyed with the idea of going down to 1 Oasis just because like it's only really good with the arms. I still think like 2 is kind of worth it. It helps specifically into like a lot of like it makes your wizard matchup free. It also makes just a lot of your other matchups very, very good. So like I still think like Oasis is kind of like a necessary evil in the stack, even though the second one is a lot more kind of like inefficient than the first one generally. All right, and they have the pulping follow up. So I guess we kind of got punished here, maybe slightly, because I guess they get the guaranteed go again. That being said, they already were gonna have go again anyways, so not really like a real punish. And I think we'll go ahead and maybe just cash in the civic duty as well. We don't hold on to our last card in hand just so that we're able to send our Titan Swiss for 5, obviously. And I think we'll go ahead and just take this last little point. So they're gonna have a vigor token for next turn, but again, not the end of and we're still up basically 8 cards. We're up 6 cards, I think. So even if we just end up having to make more inefficient blocking plays towards the end of the game, we should be fine. We basically are going to be running out of stuff. The one card we do have to be like a little bit careful about is Smash Instinct, which I don't know if we've seen a ton of just yet. Actually looks like they're kind of doing more of like a clash thing. Or maybe they're running like, what cards do they have left? They have one more Red Savage Feast, one more Mighty Windup, which you saw pitched. Oh, they do have the Smash Instinct, which I was just talking about, so that's good. But yeah, going to make another agility here, which is fine. Little bit of an awkward hand, but not completely unsalvageable. So let's go ahead and give. Probably going to end up just pitching the Staunch to Staunch here and just like fully blocking out. And I imagine they're probably going to follow up with the Ball Breaker here. No real reason to attack them since like we're not actually threatening any cards out of hand here. Like we'd only be threatening the Knucklehead, so I just want to preserve as much life as possible. And they should be relatively out of ways to get free go in. They do also have 2 clashing agilities, which you have to be, I guess, a little bit careful of. But the longer the game goes on, the worse those generally get. We have also seen the 2 pulpings. So they have a Buck Wild in terms of go again. One more Wild Ride as well. It could be a little bit of a dangerous spot here, especially drawing 2 blocks is maybe a little unfortunate. But again, we have plenty of time. And again, I don't think they're going to be presenting as much pressure as they were earlier in the game, just based on the blue density of a lot of these KO lists. So let's go ahead and just overblock here. You kind of want to maybe just consider sending Titan's Fist next turn because it will strip a card out of hand. So I guess the Fruits block is kind of pointless here, right? Maybe we'll go ahead and give these Steel Braid, like Buckler, or I can't even say this card. Steel Braid Buckler, okay. We'll go ahead and give that here just so that we can pay Pat our life total a little bit with the Fruits. I don't think they really have any on-hit slots, so I guess it doesn't matter, but we want to make sure we're using our shield before we die with it. So this will demand a card, and we'll gain 2 life. Seems pretty good. And yeah, our opponent has functionally 9 cards left at their disposal, 8 after they finish blocking. To our functionally 14 cards left in deck, so we should be in a really good spot. Notably, we have used pretty much all of our D-Reacts except a blue Staunch. But we also, I think, have a decent number of block cards left. Let me actually take a look. We've used only... We have 1 block card left. Okay. We have 1 block, 1 Staunch, and then we also have like a Canopy and some random other goodies. All right, go ahead and just make sure we're getting our value. Go ahead and block 6. And we also need to make sure we're playing around Smash Instinct, so keeping the life total high is definitely our priority here. It should probably have another one, maybe even Arsenal at this point. Which is fine. We can still block it and stay alive. But yeah, this is why this matchup is like not a matchup where you can just block out every turn. Like you do have to be a bit proactive in terms of like walking them down. Otherwise, they can definitely like fatigue you, it feels like. All right, so in this position, go ahead and just give up the Sirens here. And I think I'll just avoid giving them the vigor, so we'll take... I guess we can block with the Buckler, it's probably fine. Go ahead and just pad our life total a little bit more, so we're still staying at 5. We're taking a card out of their hand. Things are good. Again, they're kind of like disincentivized from playing the Ball Breaker, just because like we do still have the Blade Beckoner helm out. For what it's worth, I think they are going to have like a Clash of Agility here from counting their pitch deck right, because they should have like Yellow Clash plus Red Clash in hand, I think. I still don't think that does anything. Opponent will go ahead and win the Clash, but it shouldn't really matter here since they probably had some form of go. I think they still should have a Wild Ride, right? I don't know, they used the last Wild Ride. Right, so maybe they do actually have a way to use the action points here. Fortunately for us, we drew the block card though, so we should be blocking fine here. And not a super big risk of dying. Right, finishing up with the Ball Breaker, which we have plenty of armor to go ahead and give to this. So let's go ahead and give the Civic Duty to this. I think the Civic Duty shouldn't matter at this point. And yeah, it seems like they're maybe off of it. So again, Kayo can be a little bit of a challenging matchup, but again, this matchup you kind of just have to like walk them down in terms of life total. I think this deck is like okay right now. It's like kind of one of the more like bad aggro decks, but it's like for some reason kind of like good into TERRA, which is why I want to kind of showcase it. But anyways, let's go ahead and see if we can get a couple more. Go ahead and play against a Bravos. This is again one of the better decks. We'll go ahead and they're going to first. Again, this is another fatigue matchup. Again, they can present some relatively scary stuff, depending on how they're set up. But we're just going to start with Sludge here and pad our life total by 2, because again, they are kind of like the aggressors in this matchup, so padding our life total makes a lot of sense. Like, eventually we'll just win through the power of Sludge here. And yeah, this is one of the, I guess, really good matchups for this deck. Right, so we do have a Wreak Havoc, but fortunately we do not have anything in Arsenal yet. That being said, they pummel us. If they pummel us, do we care? Not particularly. I actually just go and like block 6, and if they do pummel, they pummel. Let's go ahead and just block 4. So Wreak Havoc is actually really good information because it means we might want to be a little bit careful about what we arsenal. Alright, but this is fine here. We'll go ahead and just arsenal or discard the stable and renounce on our turn. So unfortunately, their Wreak Havoc didn't quite line up there, but it is one of the more powerful tools they can have in this matchup, and they're actually seems like they're definitely teched for the Guardian Mirror potentially. So we do have to be careful if they have another one in the deck. That being said, having 2 Wreak Havoc in your arsenal, or having 2 Wreak Havoc in your sideboard is definitely like pretty taxing, given a lot of the better decks in the format right now. They might only be on the cheeky one. This also could be a pummel, but I don't think we're gonna play around it. Maybe we are gonna play around it. Let's see, like Turn Timber, whatever. Seems fine. We'll figure out something to do. And so we lost the Clash, which is normal. And interesting that that was kind of their best play. But here we're just going to keep padding our life total with the Sirens. So there's an argument, like fatigue argument, to not playing this out. But again, since we're going to win the fatigue game, gaining as much life and value as possible is our kind of number 1 priority. Go ahead and make the Might token. So we do have to be a little bit concerned. This hand's a little bit crap. That's fine. Let's go ahead and just block with the Clash of Heads here. We still have 1 more pummel to worry about, but we still have a relatively high life total. It looks like they're going to just go ahead and go for it now. Good. we can now just go and use our Turn Timber. There's only one Turn Timber in the deck, by the way, because I think that Staunch is just an overall more consistent card. Sometimes you'll get the Turn Timber value, but there's not enough Earth cards in the deck for it to be like super good all the time. That being said, there's like a decently high density, but you're not always going to have to get it off. And here, I think we're just going to cash in these 7 points of damage here. There's some merit to arsenaling the Staunch here, but since we know they're on Wreck Havoc, they could be on multiples, so holding Staunch is like a little bit of a liability. One thing that's also nice is they're out of their red pummels. That being said, I know some lists are running like one of cheeky blue pummel, which is definitely something we have to be a little bit careful of. All right, but we found our Staunch again eventually. What do we want to do here? So Staunch obviously cleanly covers this. I do kind of want to just like sit on it. Probably better to just use it in Sludge though. Like we kind of are just winning on the tempo game really hard here. So I think staunching for 7, sending 7 is pretty good. Again, pitching a lot of our more defensive tools, so if they do have the ability to kind of like set up here and have a really good turn, then we could be in a bit of danger. I think overall we're still doing it pretty okay here. Again, we're pressing their life total. They've used a lot of their armor. We've not used a ton of ours. Also, funny thing to note about Civic Steps is like losing the 2 value on Civic Steps is actually not that big of a deal. Just because like we don't really want to actually use Civic Steps in the matchup, just because it allows them to go a little bit wider and convert their hands better. So they shouldn't have another pummel. That being said, anything can happen. Let's go ahead. So how punished do we get if we use Civic Steps here? It's a consideration. I think the answer is just to be safe and not use it, though. Maybe an argument to using like Civic Duty, but let's save our armor for Dominate, right? Leak a little bit of damage. Maybe look to try to block with the Boulder Drop here. All right, looks like they're just... Oh, they do have a blue pummel. Okay, I was right on the money with that one. So yeah, now we get to go ahead and punish them for the Vigor token here. They're going to deal 4 to us. That's fine. Actually, it doesn't really punish us. We don't really punish them for the Vigor token. It's still okay. I mean, we're going to basically be swinging Sludge twice and then also making a Might on the back end. So it's still really good. And this is the hidden mode on Sludge, is you get to send it twice in Guardian Mirrors if they block with their Civic Steps. Which is why you never block with this card early in the matchup, by the way. It's how you can basically like kind of lose the game on the spot, which I think, based on their blocking, is kind of where they're at right now. Okay, we have a nice little follow-up turn here. So let's go ahead and just sludge it up. Arsenal or Renounce is a proactive play for next turn, and pad our life total. Fruits puts us up to 9. Still got a decent buffer, and again, they're still only holding on to the potential for like what 9 damage if they do like a choke slam or something. Okay, they do have another wreck, but we do know that they are gonna have the pummel here. I'm actually gonna play around lunging press, which is kind of crazy. If they lunging press me, and I do this, if this card's lunging press and I do this, then I'm gonna look like the best player ever. I guess the lunging press doesn't even do anything, right? It's not CNC, right? It's Wreck Havoc, so like we don't even have a thing in Arsenal. So at this point, we're kind of I'd like to introduce you to the concept of a sludge lock, which is kind of like a Kodachi lock, but it comes in for 7 instead of 1. That being said, this is not a hand. I wonder how many blue pummels they're on. Could actually be on like multiple blue pummels. In which case, it's going to be like a little bit awkward here. This is actually an interesting spot. Let's go ahead. So the Quicken incentivizes us to just block out here. I think I'm going to do. I'm going to block 7 like this and see what happens. But we got an extra damage out of our Clash of Seals, which is also kind of disgusting. They do have another blue pummel there, which is kind of funny, which means we cover this perfectly. And now we're just going to be sitting on the Quicken token again. So we still know they have another blue pummel in deck. But we should, since they're off an arsenal here, be able to safely like block 3 and then maybe just like kill them next turn, which is more likely than not. Again, I don't think they have they could have yellow pummel. We haven't seen one yet. But I feel like that's a little sus. And for what it's worth, we also got the staunch. They want to try to go for that. Okay, but now we put them in the sludge lock. So we get to pay 9 resources to swing 12 and then also make a might. So we're basically getting a 3-card 13. It's pretty good. Again, for all you Guardian players out there, you do have to be very, very careful about using steps. I think they were basically dying at this point, so like I don't really think they have much choice. But it's one of like a bad civic step usage or like using it too early is one of the ways you lose this matchup. That being said, I don't think this matchup is like great for them to begin with. Kill them with no, we can't kill them with Clash Ad, so we shouldn't do that yet. Let's go ahead and use Staunch, I guess. Just keep the block cards in the deck. Actually, probably was better to like block with maybe the Clash card anyways, because we probably do want to like Arsenal. But now they're basically having to give us 3 cards every turn, so again, I think this matchup is also very, very poor for Bravo, Flattering Showman. But yeah, this is one of the I don't know. Like your Guardian matchup with TERRA is basically just like completely free, just off the back of the Might token, Sledge, and then also just having like insane blocking value into Guardians. That's Ira. We win the die roll. So you want to go first in this matchup just so that you have more fatigue equity. So ideally, you want to be sending like A on your opening turn and like Arsenal like, Direct or something. But let's go ahead and give this a try. There's a lot of variety in the Ira decks. So depending on what kind of Ira deck we see, it definitely can change our play quite a bit. So interesting spot. Okay, so what is our equipment? So Kodachis are definitely kind of signaling a more normal Ira build. Debating whether or not I want to Arsenal the Staunch here versus the Pummel. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and overpitch the Pummel. Save that for second cycle. Unfortunately, we didn't have an extra blue here. It would have been kind of funny to pummel them here. But we're also giving them the information that we are on Pummel. So we see 3 cards out of their hand, which is fantastic. That's basically the ideal opener. Ira. We get them 3 cards thinner in deck. We get to Arsenal D-React. This is like basically the exact perfect scenario I was describing. But yeah, let's see how the rest of this game goes. So, starting with Kodachi. It's not amazing. It's like fine. I'm happily tempted to just go ahead and staunch this Kodachi just because like in general you don't need this to line up on a 7. Like it's kind of fine to just use on a 5. And they could also be like having like a kind of mediocre follow-up here. Okay, they do have like a pretty good. So we actually kind of did get a little bit punished. They did have the Humble to kind of follow it up. So in this case, like a semi-relevant on hit. I'm halfway tempted to just like use the Ironhide here and then pitch on our turn. So we won't be able to make a might on our next turn, which is fine. I think I'm kind of happy just going to go ahead and use the Gauntlet here, though. Apparently we can save the Gauntlet actually for the second Oasis. To me, that's a little bit stronger. Let's actually just get our 4 block value out of the Oasis now. Then we can go ahead and Arsenal the or just play out the Sirens on our turn to gain a little extra life padding. So again, our hero ability is turned off for a turn, which is fine. So it looks like they are running some number of larger attacks. The one downside of doing this in Ira, obviously, is that there is like a non-zero chance that you basically like will brick on a lot of more expensive attacks and not have like a bunch of go wide stuff. Because it's a chain ender, right? Alright, so go ahead and always take the one off the Kodachi. We got a really good blocking game here. This is not an opportunity we can go ahead and use Civic Steps just yet. Let's make sure we're just getting the most out of our cards here, so go ahead and block with the Glacial. Maybe save 2 cards for whatever they do next. or we could just save one here. So let's go ahead and just use up the boulder drop now. Again, we're gonna just make sure we're trying to run them out of cards as much as possible here. I think in this case, it's kind of fine to just go ahead and give them both of our 3 blocks here. Again, the longer the game goes on, the more it favors us. Again, we do have to be a little bit cognizant of the fatigue game. The nice part is that we're kind of at a functionally lower life total now. So their Scar for Scars, if they're running them in the deck, which I think most Iras are generally going to get a bit worse. Since our hand is so block heavy, I'm like almost tempted to like this might like we could get punished for the Civic Steps here, but I think it's actually correct to go ahead and use it here. Because like the rest of our hand blocks 12, like we actually want them to play out cards here. They're getting us with a bluster buff, which is fine. So again, we want them to actively like follow up with something else here. So we're gonna just block with the Clash of Legs. Like some merit to even giving them another one, but if they come in for like another 7, I feel like they typically kind of like max out around 6. We could also give like the Iron Heights here. That's also fine-ish because we can float. We can do like both of these. Well, that being said, I don't really want to use the I want to like personally Oasis if I can. Let's go ahead and take just another 2 here. Again, we want to get them to a point where they're basically all blues in deck. So I want them to try to actively punish me with the Quickening, because that means that's just one less threat in their deck. It seems like they actually made a pretty heads-up play and are opting to just go for the back heel kick instead. So a bit awkward, but we're going to end up just taking a little bit more damage here. For what it's worth, I think that was actually a good Quicken. We could have actually maybe been like a little bit more aggressive and blocked a bit more on that bluster buff. That seems here like they're maybe just going to give up some equipment here. The clashes might be a little bit awkward in the late game. We'll see how it goes. Again, we have our Oasis live. We have our Iron Heights up. A good spot. So we'll continue taking one here. We actually could incentivize them to send an attack that doesn't have go again after this if we want to give them the Civic Steps now. They don't hate. Let's go ahead and just make them attack in. Again, we have like a really good defensive hand. So giving them the Quicken here might not even punish us that bad. With the Ironhide Gauntlets, we basically just have a ton of good blocking equity. One awkward part here is unfortunately we don't have like an Earth card, so like we don't get the additional 1 might value out of our Gauntlets plus Oasis combo. Still should be fine. Go ahead and use our Gauntlets up. For what it's worth, I actually probably should have blocked with the Clash of Shields there over using the Oasis, because the Oasis is more reactive in case they are on like Razor Reflex or something. Go in with another Kodachi, seems fine. And we'll hold on to this Renounced Grandeur, see if we can punish them. So here, I think we'll let them have to go again. If they have like a Snatch, which they did represent, then that's going to be fine. Could also just like overblock it, but I don't really love that. We do need to start walking down life totals a little bit here. So we'll go ahead and let them have to go in here. And if they do have like a Snatch to follow up, then I think that's okay. And yeah, they do have a Snatch, but we can go ahead and cleanly block with the Blade Beckoner plus the Renounce here. And we run them out of another important threat in the deck, so it's kind of okay. Follow up with the Fist here, so we'll keep evening out the life total. So let's keep track of how many 1 cost they've used. I have not seen a single Bittering Thorns, I have not seen a single Looking for Scrap, and I have not seen a single Razor Reflex or anything. So overall, I'd say they've not actually used a ton of their better threats in the deck. So you do need to be very, very careful at this point. Really good hand for blocking, though. We have the Sirens to block the second Kodachi, so we basically negate the effects of the first Kodachi. Oh, it seems like they're on even bigger than that. Okay. So what does even bigger than that tell me? So this is a little bit different from, like, I guess some other IRA lists I've seen. It maybe means that they're running more... This is maybe their solution to going a bit wider over, like, Razor Reflex or whatever. But yeah, I think we'll just continue to block here. So we know they're on another Looking for Scrap at minimum. So you have to be very careful about using the Vigor token prematurely. They've also pitched a lot of blues. So they're going to get to a point in the game where they're going to functionally run out of cards. So they're sitting 5, we go to 3. We need to just make sure we're keeping our life total healthy, because once we get to the Civic Duty endgame, the like tempo game doesn't really matter a ton. We're even gonna actually give them, I think, a steel blade weapon. No, or no, steel. Okay, like 5th time this night, I can't say this. We're gonna give them another. I don't think we're gonna give this here. I think we're gonna wait on it. Doesn't really matter a ton, but can help us block out non-hit. Yeah, we'll still stay at 7 here from the sirens, so it's still fine. Again, we're wasting a might token, but again, this, like, I think they basically pitched almost like 5 or 6 blues here, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's another blue in the pitch, so we're gonna eventually get them to a point where their deck is almost entirely blues. It looks like they changed their playmat there, which is kind of funny. Keep blocking. Again, we are a little bit scared of Razor Reflex here and whether or not they're running it. That being said, the even bigger than that indicate to me that they might not even be on it. They are on Bittering Thorns, though, which is a pretty good one in this matchup. It does make, like, this is one of the cards that lets them play around the Civic Duty kind of blockout strat. But they're going to end on the Scarfer Scar here, which we can then cleanly block with the Renounce. Not cleanly, but good enough, you know. And then we can go ahead and send Fist on our turn just to keep getting them out of cards. Again, you can be fatigued in this matchup, especially if they're running a lot of the bigger attacks. So getting them, like blocking out, getting them to the point where they run out of action points, their Scar for Scar's Brick. That's kind of like the core strat. And anyway, we still have some armor to work with, so we're not even that bad of a spot. That being said, this hand's a little bit on the rougher side. A lot of 2 blocks here. So, like halfway tempted. I guess we have 2 fruits, so there's no real reason to give armor. Yeah. We also saw both cut throughs. They might be on like 1 more even bigger than that or something. They are running a lot of blues in their deck, it looks like. So we're not at a point yet where we can use our Civic Duty, unfortunately. We still need to wait for those last two 1 costs. Assuming that they have like probably 2 1 costs. That's my guess. Let's go ahead and block, I think. Just get a little bit of a Steel Braid Buckler. Okay, one of these days I'm going to say this right. Make sure we're getting a bit of value. All right, so I am scared of Razor Reflex here a little bit. That being said, we do have the fruits to hopefully cover that up. So I think our strat here is to hope they don't have it, and if they do, we just go for the fruits. Okay, they do have the Razor Reflex. Just fine, so we can fruits this to cover this up. And whether or not we die here is actually very dependent on what the follow-up is here. Oh, another Razor Reflex. Okay, well, we have another fruits to deal with that. I mean, kind of funny. Okay, so we got a 1 here. Is awkward, obviously. Yeah, Razor Reflex is definitely pretty solid in this matchup. And I guess now we're like kind of forced to give up the Civic Duty, which is a bit awkward. But maybe they just don't draw 1 cost and we're fine. I'd say maybe a little bit of an awkward draw there. But if we can brick them off the Vigor here, it's actually kind of... curious why they played out the up sticks and run. So we're in a precarious spot here. I don't actually think we're super favored to win this. That being said, they do have a lot of blues left in their deck. But the problem is definitely like they can play out Kadachi, blue, and then they get us pretty good. Sirens is quite nice in this position though. So let's go ahead and block 4 here. Again, they should be mostly blues at this point. They have 1 more looking for scrap, and I feel like the rest, or they have 1 more scar, 1 more looking for scrap, and I feel like the rest of their deck is functional blues at this point. So there's the looking. So they shouldn't have too much else in terms of aggressive go wide stuff. There's also maybe even a little bit of a mistake there to play out the a little bit of a mistake there to play out the up 6 there, because I don't think they used that last turn, right? Okay, and there's the flying kick, which I think kills us. So we'll give him a good game here. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to showcase the Ira loop. I think they maybe just had a little bit of a pretty good. Let's actually take a look at what threats they had left in deck. But yeah, they got us pretty good there. So they're basically all blues at this point. So they had Soul Bead, Strike, Scar for Scar. So I think that the couple of really awkward hands we drew kind of killed us. There's probably some room, like maybe you can actually, if you know they're kind of like on more like heavy attack versions, or like taller attacks, you can actually probably run the what do you call it? The Turn Timber in this matchup as well, because that would actually probably saved us quite a bit of health. But yeah, I think this matchup, like, we lost. That being said, we were in a spot where we could start Kodachi time walking them, so we almost got to the point. I'm going to leave this game in to show that you can still lose to Iro. Like, it's definitely possible for you to just, like, kind of draw your 2 blocks and then die. But yeah, I think in general that tends to not happen. You tend to just draw a lot more of your better block cards. That being said, we did pitch a couple of our block cards, so maybe we did that to ourselves potentially. Right, playing against an Iro again. So I think we lost the last matchup against this Iro. Let's go ahead and run it back and see if we can actually showcase the similar, basically, game plan. So we have a pretty good start here. Go just swings Titan's Fist and Powder Life by 4, which is really valuable. Again, this matchup is scary. They're going to go ahead and just use 2 of their blues. So you know that from our last game, this is actually a very blue-heavy version of Ira. Means that the more we block out in the early game, the more we should be able to punish them in the late game. Let's go ahead and keep taking our damage off the Kodachi. They're pitching a Snatch, it seems, for late game. And based on the last game, we know they are on Looking for Scrap, and we also know they are on Bittering. Again, I'm leaving in the last game, I think, because it's good to showcase like how you can lose to Ira. But yeah, again, sometimes they will draw hands like this, and then you will like almost just like insta-win. Maybe not an insta-win, but you know what I mean. So let's go ahead and just block with the Disable and the Clash of Shield. So they're pitching a Cut Through, a Snatch, and a Flying Kick later, which is a really bad pitch stack. That being said, it's probably going to be next to some number of blues, so maybe not as bad. But yeah, we're just going to keep sending in with the Titan's Fist here. Get our nice little point of value, and then we also get to pitch the Glacial here, which is fantastic. Again, let's be very careful about giving them Quickens here. So this hand's like a little bit of a trap. Let's go ahead and actually just block out a bit early. I don't want to even send like Siren plus Pummel. I'd rather just kind of walk down the life totals as much as possible. All right, it seems like they're going to follow up with these smash up here, so we can go ahead and just block on this. Again, no real reason to go on the offense here. Just take a little bit of damage and just try to get the max value out of our cards. So again, we have a lot of blues in this deck. They've used a decent number of reds, and they have a bunch of reds in their deck as well. I'm going to give the Somersault here just to soak up a little bit of damage. Again, sometimes you can capitalize on them sending Kodachi to block like 2, and that's kind of good enough a lot of the time. All right, is it the opportunity to give Civic Steps? I don't think just yet. And we're going to be really careful with this this time, kind of going around, because I think they did have a lot of really good ways to end up using. Maybe go and just give the Blade Beckoner here. See what they do. I want to hold on to the Autumn's Touch because it's pretty good in the pitch deck as well. And it seems like they also have the Soul Bead Strike to follow it up. So there is potential merit to letting them have the Soul Bead Strike. We also just give 4 here. We also do know our opponents on some number of Razor Reflex, which if they use it there, it's kind of fun. Let's keep making sure we're getting our hammer value. All right, getting some blues out of the deck seems good. They're going to continue to do their Kodachi thing. I think we did, for what it's worth, have like a little bit of the high roll, and that we were able to get the fruits out of the deck pretty early. Because I think that the later the game goes, sometimes, as we saw, those can be a little bit of a liability. Right, Snatch coming in. Go ahead and just block. Or block here. Block, 5 with the Summer's Fall, but I kind of want to actually save the Summer's Fall. So we can, I guess the way we block one is to do this. That being said, they could also reflex this, which would be kind of annoying. I almost want to like overblock this slightly. Maybe that doesn't even make sense. I think if we just, if they have the Razor Reflex, they have it. That's maybe the way we have to think about it. Okay, so they do have it here. That's potentially fine. We're going to leak 2 damage, and then they're going to get to draw a card. That means they're also just like 1 card deeper in the deck. So we can maybe potentially staunch like a Humble here or something, or maybe staunch just a Kadachi. Seems acceptable. For what it's worth, we maybe could have held on to the Earth card here for 1 additional point value. But sometimes, like, especially Summer's Fall is kind of like a liability, especially sometimes in this matchup. Like, you could actually, there's probably a build of this where you maybe even cut down on like a blue Summer's Fall if you're just kind of teching for Ira. That being said, I think our opponent's got like a pretty good build of Ira from what it looks like. They've got a lot of like high density attacks, it seems like. I don't know. Like, I think this deck does very well against some versions of Ira, and some versions it maybe like does struggle a bit against. All right, here we're just gonna take a little bit of damage. And no real reason to use the Civic Steps just yet. But I'd be careful to not give them a ton of action points. And maybe our best play here is to actually staunch. I think this actually might be a good Civic Steps opportunity, because they might not actually have the ability to punish us for doing this. Like, I think the punish here is like Razor, but in that case we can like resist this. Like, I think this makes sense if they do want to have like a follow-up here. Okay, and the follow-up is Torrent of Tempo. Then we can just go ahead and staunch this. They could have a Snatch to follow it up, which would be a little bit annoying. But not the end of the world. Yeah, we did also see they had flying kicks, or whatever that card is, that they did pitch pretty early on. So we could have one of those in late game, which is why I'm a little hesitant to use the staunch there. I think it's better to just block early and block often if we can. All right, so that is the second 1 cost out of the way. Let's go ahead and block with the Clash of Arms here. Right, and then Kadachi for 2. There's maybe some merit to giving up the Clash, but I think taking a little bit of damage is also fine here. We do want to start getting a little bit low in terms of taking damage to gain life from Oasis. So we'll take another 1 here even. Right, seems like they're going to end on the Bluster buff. They are pitching a Razor Reflex for later also, which could be potentially annoying. Do not have the ability to pay for the Bluster buff. Let's go ahead and just send 7 with the Renounce here. Again, it's like kind of whatever, but probably fine enough. Again, they're not really making many auras over there, so they might even be incentivized to just take the 7 here. Yeah, we just want to keep blocking and make sure we're doing good value math here. Okay, seems like they're maybe just giving up all the armor, which makes sense. Yeah, I want to be very careful with these Civic Steps on this go around. That being said, could give it here. How bad is that? I know they have a lot of go again attacks already in the deck. They've used 1 Razor Reflex, so we know they have 1 in pitch. Is this the opportunity to actually go ahead and use the Civic Steps? Because they do want to follow up just with a Kachi. Hand blocks pretty well. We do have the Ironhide Gauntlets. I think I'm going to go for it. Yeah, we do need to use this at some point. But yes, Civic Steps definitely one of the easiest ways to lose the game if you mistime it. it looks like they did not pay, so this comes 6. We can go ahead and just take 2 off this, I believe. We should not be at risk of them going for the razor because they did just do it. All right, so they're looking for scrap as well. So now we can block with the boulder drop plus the Ironhide gauntlets. This is a nice clean block. Now our Civic Steps is fully out of the way. So what attacks do they still have left? They still have 1 Bittering Thorns that we have to care about because they've used 3 of their 1-cost Gogans. It looks like they're also going to go for the pause here as well. I mean, we can just block with these Sirens and Safe Harbor pretty easily here. If they're smart, they'll actually try to close the chain. Right, ending on the flying kick. So a really nice turn from there. I think the Gogan did actually matter there, so might have been a little bit a minor punt on our hand. We could actually go for the Civic Duty block here if we wanted to. It is risky because they do have exactly 1 Bittering Thorns and also the Razor Reflex also as well. Go ahead and just stay healthy though, and we're also going to be getting 1 from these Sirens here. So we're going to be staying 8 to 8. Again, if we do end up time walking here, it's going to be a really big deal. That being said, they could very easily have the Bittering or any number of other answers. So in this case, I think I want to just Arsenal Pummel. We need to block this out to make sure they're not hitting with this, and they shouldn't have another Razor. So I think this is the block. Alternatively, we can block with Oasis plus Shield. Actually, maybe that's better so that we can send the Sirens. I think I like this the most. Could also get punished by like a 1-cost back react or something. I think this is like the highest value line. Just gaining a bit of life to pad the life total. Alright, so the one last card we basically have to worry about from this position is just that reflex. We'll keep taking our little point of damage. Again, I think I am going to block with a 3 block on Kodachi for 2. They end up sending like another 6 here off like a Humble or something, then it's fine. Bittering. This is the last Bittering actually, so this is good info. So I think they pitched a flying kick plus like 3 reds, and one of them was not the Razor Reflex. So actually, I think we are now in the clear to go ahead and use the Civic Duty. Where is their? They have 1 more Snatch. I think they pitched a Snatch as well. I think their pitch was like 3 reds, some blues, and then a Snatch at some point, if I'm not mistaken. Right, they're gonna finish on the Pouncing Key, which is basically just. It should, or actually, I guess just send the Titan's Fist in here because we might punt this for disruption. Probably shouldn't have shown them to that, but it's still fine. So I think we're still time walking them with the Vigor here, and there's the Snatch. So wait, did they not? Or no, they might have pitched a Snatch. Maybe. I'm not sure. So Humble here, a little bit annoying. We just Arsenal and Snatch though. I mean, we know they do still have that flying whatever or spinning flying kick. That's what not spinning wheel kick. But we can go ahead and just block here. And we should be sending some good disruption here because again, we know that they're not on any D-reacts, and then they do not have any armor left over, so the boulder drop is pretty impactful here. Again, they got us in the first game, but I think because we timed our quickens just a little bit better this game, that I think we made it a little bit easier on ourselves. Again, one of the ways you do lose this matchup is just a badly timed. All right, so they're going to take 4 here, and they're also going to have to put a card on the bottom. So I think we're now at their stack. So their stack should be 2 reds in hand. What did they block with? They blocked with no, they did have a blue. So I think they drew 2 reds and then a blue. So they should be having like a red on top or like a cut through or something if I'm not mistaken, or maybe they have a cut through in hand already. All right, let's go ahead and keep taking our damage. Yeah, we still have the Staunch as a backup, but we'll go ahead and regain that life off these Sirens. There's the Smash Up to finish it off. Again, I kind of want to just sit on the Arsenal. We are getting a little bit low on cards, but so are they. What happens if we actually just take the 1 damage here? We reveal the Staunch, and then we just send 4, functionally 5. I think that's maybe our best bet. We still do have to play around the Razor Reflex, which is what the Staunch is going to help us do. I think that Razor Reflex should be coming up in the next hand here. So go ahead and pitch the Autumn's Touch. Yeah, we're making sure to not overblock because we are in the fatigue endgame, basically. Then we'll make a Might on the back end. So we know about the Razor, I think, in one of these. Oh, and Canopy Shelters are going to do a lot of work here. So we'll take this 1. And anytime they go for the Razor here, it's going to be really awkward for them. They might even go for it on this. I think they have it in hand currently, is my guess. So let's go ahead and start. So did they have another snatch? No, they used the Snatch. I'm trying to think what the last card in hand is. It might just be like a random blue. Yeah, we'll go ahead and staunch this still. It might. Now we're sending in Titan Swiss for 7, which is very funny. This should demand 3 cards now. Or no, 2 cards, because I think it just gets 2 blues. Right, and we are kind of nearing the end game here, but we still do have to be very careful of the Razor Reflex. So I'm going to go in and preemptively just give the Blade Beckoner here. I think we know they still have 1 last one. So we just got to make sure we stay out of range. Let's actually block the Macho here because it's a little bit more likely that we're going to send the Thunderquake if they just like pass. Right, and then I think we have them basically in a pummel block here. They could Razor this, but I think it's fine. So their last card in Arsenal should be the Razor. All right, we got them on this go around, I think. Again, you have to be very careful about timing your pummels in this matchup, and you also just have to be cognizant of fatigue. I think for what it's worth, we did also have a really good start. So maybe we're just doing a little bit overall. So yeah, we had them basically all in blues, just the Razor Reflex. So we're in a really good end game. For what it's worth, I think their config is also very good into us specifically because they have 6/1 costs. A lot of Iras are cutting the Razor Reflex and just running the Looking for Scraps as well as the Bittering Thorns. And again, I think this is a matchup you can very easily lose. That being said, I think that the deck, our deck is definitely geared to beat Ira. I think they just have a very good config, particularly into us. A lot of the 2 costs are also very helpful in terms of fatigue value, so your Humbles and your Flying. Well, and that being said, I think we got lucky that game. I think they got unlucky. That being said, I still think our game plan is overall, I think, still very favored into Ira, especially if they're not... if they're on like a more standard config, I think it's a little bit better for us. But yeah, I think that's probably gonna wrap it up yeah, I think that's probably gonna be our last little showcase. All right, so I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. So again, this is my secret TERRA list that I've been working on for probably at least a month and a half. Again, I have 250 plus games on various iterations of this list. Probably even more. It's probably like closer to 400, 500, somewhere around there between like all the TERRA lists I think I've ever played in this format. But again, I think this is where I'm going to leave the list, at least the public list for that matter. I think this list, this is basically what I would take if today I was going to go to the Battle Hardened. Again, I'll still probably iterate on this. I think there's definitely some room for improvement and maybe even cutting some of the more awkward Earth 2 blocks. I think you still need some critical density of them in certain matchups, but maybe you can afford to get away without Summer's Fall. That being said, I do think Summer's Fall is still really good. But I do think that there are some, maybe you can cut Flourish or something, some 2 blocks to maybe give you a little bit more play into some of the other decks. But again, I still think the deck as it is right now is really, really good. Again, I have complete matchup notes as well as just kind of labeling them from easy to medium to hard. So if you want to take my matchup notes and go win a Battle Hardened, maybe in Seattle, maybe somewhere else, feel free to take this list. And then if you end up winning something, let me know, or top 8ing. And then, you come on the channel, talk about the list, because I think I'm probably not going to end up playing this list if I'm playing in the calling. But if I scrub out, I will be playing this pretty much exact list. But anyways, I think this list is really good. I tried to showcase some of the more popular matchups, and again, I tried to predicate my testing into the better decks in the format. Oh no, we dropped the win rate percentage. Cut the video. But anyways, I try to predicate my testing into the better decks in the format. So again, I try to find Chane Games. I try to find Ira Games because I think those are really good practice. I try to Briar Games not so much, although I did lose 1 Briar recently today, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I try to predicate my testing towards like the better decks in the format. So I hope that this is helpful. And again, this is my argument for why I think TERRA is a really good deck. I think he's got a very good matchup spread, and I think he does have an advantage over Oldhim into certain matchups where you want to be a little bit more proactive, and just have like a better kind of like late game value output. But yeah, again, thank you all for watching, and I will see y'all next time. And a special thank you to all the folks who decided it would be a good idea to give us $2 on Patreon. We really appreciate the support, but it's obviously never required.